a graveyard of heroes. Midst the blood-soaked snow and tattered banners, a solitary white bird alights upon a gore-stained blade, its gaze eerily calm. Leaving the steel behind, the bird takes flight, soaring over the mountain of corpses toward a fortress looming on the horizon. A lone blonde knight shivers in the biting frost. Clad in armor bearing a lion-shaped pauldron, he steadies his trembling breath, will of iron. Cape fluttering, he stares down a tide of red-eyed orcs. His unsheathed blade mirrors the carnage and demonic fury ahead. Mana ripples through the steel. A voice from the past whispers, for eons mankind has endured a gauntlet of eternal suffering. Rivers of blood carved through history as blades clashed in a cycle of endless slaughter. Yet from this chaos, titans fell as legends rose. And through every epic struggle, I was there, the silent witness at the center of the storm. My name is Gruhorn, the legendary magic blade. Back in the now, the Lion Knight marches toward his destiny. He crushes a stray arrow under his boot unfazed. Before him stands a fresh legion of orcs hungry for his soul. Trapped before the castle walls, he's a lone wolf against a sea of monsters. Suddenly, the ground trembles as a massive tom. Fuming with rage, the orc commander swings a heavy axe. A sickening crunch echoes as the blade bites. A sinister red aura flares, buffing the orc horde. But Gruhorn realizes things have changed. I'm no longer just a weapon. Today, I fight as the warrior himself. Blue energy explodes outward as he taps into the forbidden elemental arts. Frozen death erupts from the earth in a forest of ice spikes. His eyes glow with cold fury while mana dances upon his lips. Charging his ultimate move, a frost blue domain expands, consuming the snowfields, the mountains, and the sky above the fortress. Silence falls over the blood-spattered walls. Then the impossible happens. The corpses of the fallen defenders begin to twitch. Blue mana surges into their cold veins. Shattered soldiers stand once more, their spirits ignited by the sword's divine light. A war horn pierces the air, the signal for the dawn charge. Warriors rally, their blades shimmering with an otherworldly blue glow. Gruhorn's vessel smirks his blade, humming with power. With a single swing, a massive crescent of blue light cleaves through the orc front lines. Alert, the Great Winter War has commenced. At the vanguard, our hero charges headlong into the blizzard. The Lion Knight blurs through the storm. I remember them all, the titans of old who once gripped my hilt. One golden-haired knight stands out in my memory. Now, in this frantic present, he's a whirlwind of death amidst the greenskins. He reaps through the horde with a savage grin. They weren't just my wielders, they were my brothers in arms. My mentors, my disciples. I see a silver-haired master channeling my essence to bisect a towering monster in a single stroke. Every epic tale, every myth, it all traces back to me. A warrior queen swings me, splitting an orc from head to toe. Back to reality. The Lion Knight coolly adjusts his collar amidst the carnage. From the depths of memory, his eyes snap open. The haze of the past fades. In this era of chaos, Gruhorn senses a darkness far greater than before. A new orc king has risen. The chieftain bellows a challenge, but a flicker of blue flame ignites within the knight's gaze. My consciousness fully awakens. The wounded knight surges with power encased in a shimmering cocoon of pure blue mana. Weapon and warrior become one. They collide with the orc leader, their unified strike, sending the monster reeling in shock. Victory is ours. As the sun dips below the horizon, the knight stands over his fallen foe, a faint, weary smile on his lips. The battle is over, but the legend is just beginning. I will become a myth once more. Then a celestial flame appears. The cycle of rebirth begins. I was cast into this world as a mere blade, enduring the passage of centuries. I've served many forging common men into historical icons. But then I met him, a true brother in spirit, a grizzled warrior. Together we waded through oceans of monsters, beasts, gargoyles, and winged nightmares. We purged the undead. He started as a simple boy from Leonberg, and together we conquered the known world. Our bond was legendary. But the scene shifts to the Frost Mountains, where an omen of death swirls in the clouds. The endgame. Cataclysmic magic tears the mountains apart. My master staggers his strength, finally failing him. He spits blood, clenching my hilt with white knuckles. He kneels in the snow as a colossal white dragon descends from the heavens. The beast is a mountain itself. It lets out a roar of pink energy, but the knight doesn't flinch. Not today. This is his final stand. He unleashes a blinding beam of light, striking the dragon squarely in its massive chest. I burst into blue flames in his grasp. A chaotic explosion of blue and pink mana engulfs the dragon in a blinding flash. He grins through the pain, whispering for me to lend him my strength one last time. A massive blue aura flares around him. One final charge. He lunges through the storm, driving my edge straight toward the dragon's beating heart. The sky shatters as we pierce the beast. The long, bloody struggle has finally come to its legendary end. A final devastating blow cleaves the dragon as blinding aura erupts. Gruhorn's ancient memories suddenly ignite. This was the legendary moment they toppled the Frost Mountain's white dragon. Victory birthed a new kingdom. Gruhorn transitioned from a mere weapon to a divine relic enshrined forever as the Dragon Slayer's blade. Fulfilling his master's dying wish, he guarded that royal bloodline until annoying voices shattered his long slumber. The ancient sword stirs groggily, irritated by the sudden influx of mindless chatter and chaotic noise. Feeling himself being manhandled, he furiously demands to know which peasant dares disturb his sacred rest. A bloated blonde prince claims ownership with a smug grin, leaving the court paralyzed in absolute shock. Only the king can touch that, a knight wails. Grohorn realizes his current wielder is actually royalty. Gazing at the greedy, narcissistic brat, the legendary sword decides this kid is nothing but a pampered pig. As the prince brags about his untouchable status, Grohorn senses a massive red flag and triggers judgment. System check: Adrian Leonberg, age 16, 0 talent, trait list, absolute hot garbage, a total disaster. Grohorn is physically disgusted. How did the legendary sword saint produce such a pathetic bottom-tier descendant? Adrian is already drooling over his future power trip, desperate for the king and nobles to finally crawl. He believes wielding Grohorn is his ultimate get-out-of-loser jail card. To the sword, it's just a pathetic joke. Driven by pure delusion, Adrian stages a dramatic prayer, begging the legendary blade for an epic power buff. Grohorn gives a hard pass. Desperate and enraged, the prince starts swinging the divine weapon like a lunatic. Staff scramble in pure terror as Adrian goes full tyrant, threatening anyone who dares tell him to stop. Slashing wildly, he envisions a world where every hater in the palace finally bows before his might. In a mindless frenzy, Adrian lunges forward, catches a toe, and faceplants while the sword spins away. The flying blade pierces a guard's hand before hurtling toward the crowd. Pure, unadulterated chaos erupts. A maid shrieks the princess, but the scene on the floor is far more gruesome than anyone imagined. Adrian is down. Grohorn is buried deep in the prince's chest. Blood pools as royal physicians are summoned. Grohorn is stunned. He just accidentally impaled his own wielder. Adrian's vision quickly begins fading to black. For the first time ever, the sword blacks out. Enter Adrian Leonberg, the kingdom's most infamous royal failure. Arrogant, talentless, and incredibly greedy. He was the very last person fit to inherit the dragon's throne. A lazy, gluttonous nightmare of a prince. But after miraculously surviving death, the palace rumors began shifting. The rumor mill is spinning fast. The palace maids swear Prince Adrian has changed into someone else. They think it's just a temporary act fueled by fear, but Adrian couldn't care less about their gossip. Grohorn wakes up in a cold sweat. He's possessed the prince. He's effectively stolen his own comrade's bloodline. He's living a stolen life. Suddenly, a maid bursts in. The king has arrived for an official visit. Adrian, now hosting Grohorn's soul, scoffs. The old man ignored me while I was dying. Why show up now? Watch your tone, the maid hisses just as a cold-eyed, silver-haired knight looms dangerously behind her. The knight sneers. Apparently cheating death didn't fix Adrian's trash personality or his sharp, disrespectful tongue. He dismisses the maid, claiming the king expects zero from Adrian. Grohorn wonders, who is this guy? The knight growls, reminding Adrian of their intense master-student bond. He accuses the prince of playing dumb. Ah, the pig's former tutor, Grohorn realizes. It's time to play the amnesia card just to survive. He claims his memories are scrambled, alarming the knight. Suddenly, the herald bellows. His majesty approaches. Grohorn's focus sharpens instantly. It's time to meet the man sitting on his old comrade's throne. He expected another scoundrel, but the king's presence is actually formidable. This might be interesting. Grohorn recalculates his judgment. Maybe the Leonberg royal bloodline hasn't completely turned into a dumpster fire yet. The king radiates pure authority and icy composure. Immediately, the knight reports Adrian's bizarre memory loss. Amnesia. The court loses its collective mind. Every royal physician is summoned to the room on the double. After a frantic examination, the head doctor delivers the verdict. The prince's body is actually in peak health. The physician suggests the memory loss is just a temporary side effect of the massive mental shock. Grohorn starts to sweat. This is getting tense. The king narrows his eyes. How? Suspiciously convenient. Does Adrian think amnesia is a get-out-of-jail-free card? The king roars, lecturing that everyone slips up. But true evolution demands owning those failures. He snarls that Adrian has trashed every lesson he was ever taught. Since Adrian's mind is a total blank, the king declares he's still the same stagnant, pathetic mess. Losing his cool, the king barks that Adrian is destined to be a useless bottom feeder forever. As the court panics and Grohorn takes the verbal beatdown, he silently curses this chaotic mess he's in, realizing he's treated like trash, not royalty. He shudders, wondering just how toxic the OG Adrian actually was. The king drops Adrian's name, jolting Grohorn. Suddenly, the queen bursts in sobbing while she clings to her son, claiming she understands his mental fog. She vows his memories will return, dismissing his dark past as totally irrelevant. She smothers him with affection, caressing his face while grieving over how his once handsome features have faded. Grohorn cringes, thinking he still looks pretty thick, but she's just overjoyed to see him back from the brink. Holding him tight, she pleads with him to stay away from cursed relics like that deadly sacred sword. She cries that her world would have ended if he hadn't woken up. Adrian just sits there feeling incredibly awkward. Drowning in her motherly love? Watching her weep, Gruhorn feels a massive wave of guilt. She's clinging to a ghost. The real Adrian vanished the moment the sword hijacked his form. A voice sighs that this whole vibe is heavy. As night falls over the majestic palace, the queen softly tucks the round prince in, telling him to rest up. Once she's gone, the prince lets out a dark laugh. He recalls an old promise to protect a friend's bloodline. Yet here he is, the accidental executioner of that very lineage. The irony cuts deep. A mistake or not, the blood is on his hands. Steel-eyed, he swears to live a legendary life for the boy he replaced. Reborn as a blade, he spent eons fixing other people's messes. This new body might be trash-tier and bloated, but that's irrelevant. His new mission, reconstruct his god-tier power from the ground up. With the experience of training legends, he gears up for a comeback. Step 1. Forge a legendary mana heart. He starts drawing in energy, a radiant glow leaking from his lips. Azure mana surges, swirling into his chest cavity. He forces the core to take shape, but the energy begins to thrash violently under the pressure. Boom, the power detonates, ripping through his nerves. He gasps as agony sears his frame. Something's wrong. This fragile vessel just can't tank the raw energy, causing his mana to leak like a sieve. Zero quit in him. He grit his teeth, forcing his body into a second agonizing attempt. He cranks the output, flooding his system. Keep going, he growls, slamming the mana back into his chest. Again and again, until another explosion sends him collapsing. Sprawled on the floor, he curses this pathetic meat suit, and its 0% mana compatibility. He screams in frustration. This body's stats are absolute garbage. In his old blade form, he'd have brute forced this evolution in seconds. Now, he's stuck in a low-level dungeon body. A soft knock breaks the silence. A maid edges in, nervously clutching a tray with a steaming beverage. She stammers that it's a healing tonic from the queen, begging him to just take one sip for her sake. She flinches, waiting for the inevitable tantrum, or a flying bowl, terrified of his legendary mood swings. Flashbacks of him shattering vials and screaming his head off haunt her. She's prepared for the worst. But as he eyes the liquid, his pupils dilate. He realizes this isn't just some bitter tea. It's packed with pure mana. He snatches the bowl, chugging the entire thing before the maid can even blink. She stands frozen, shook by his cooperation. He slams the bowl down with a loud clack. He barks that he's done and tells her to beat it. She scrambles out of the room, confused but relieved. With the tonic's energy buzzing in his veins, he preps for one last shot at the mana heart. Enveloped in ghostly blue flames, he restarts the ritual. This time, the energy feels different. It's sticking. A wave of relief washes over him as the core finally stabilizes. It's working. Finally. Sure, the capacity is tiny and won't last long, but it's the foundation he desperately needed. He bolts into the hallway, catching the maid by surprise. He points at the empty tray, demanding, "Yo, where can I get more of that juice?" Days pass and his hands now glow with intensified azure mana. With a predatory smirk, he whispers that the real game starts now. The comeback is officially on. With his gathered energy, he's ready to forge a true mana heart. He's built countless hearts before. Recreating it should be a breeze, or so he thinks. But as the ritual ignites, his face contorts. The sheer force is overwhelming. Then the realization hits him like a truck. Forging a mana heart is pure agony. He remembers the haunting screams of those before him. They described it as internal wildfire, like their chests were detonating. He grips his heart, gasping. This hell, it's just part of the process. Steeling his resolve, he welcomes the pain. The torture was inevitable. Don't slip away, he commands himself. Passing out now means certain death. If he loses, focus, the mana will backflow. He visualizes the lethal energy surging backward. A single slip-up would shred his physical form. Bathed in cold sweat, he fights the darkness. He clings to consciousness through raw spite. Kneeling in the storm, he chants his focus. He has to dominate this power. Slowly, he wrangles the chaotic mana, refusing to let panic win. Carefully, he weaves the energy through his heart's delicate circuits, mastering the tide. The mana heart begins to fuse with his flesh. The raging energy suddenly calms, descending like a droplet, disturbing a still lake. The violent power finally submits, leaving him upright and alive. A rhythmic blue radiance pulses from his chest. Gasping for air, he confirms the impossible success. The thrum of power in his ribcage is intoxicating. It's here he breathes, barely believing it. Staring at the glowing core, a realization dawns. This heart wasn't made for an owner, it's his. No longer a tool for others. A manic laugh escapes him as he claims his masterpiece. Power strictly for himself. I've actually done it, he roars. A mana heart born in this flesh. Mid-celebration, a glitch in reality stops him cold. A shimmering golden window flickers into existence. Mana heart successfully created. Is this a status window? The interface looks eerily familiar. It's the exact same UI he used to display for his masters back when he was a blade. Why is he seeing this now? Suddenly a new ping alerts him, restoring connection to origin. Shock washes over him as alerts flood his vision. Connection, unstable. The system is freaking out. High-tier skills are locked, but judgment is active. He can now scan his enemy's true potential. New buffs unlocked third eye and third ear. His senses are about to get a massive upgrade. Vision and hearing sharpened. He stares out the window, skeptical of these authorities he's inherited. He tests his limits. Suddenly, a distant tree snaps into high-definition focus. Every vein on every leaf is crystal clear. Next, he tunes in his ears. The world isn't just louder, it's layered. He's picking up frequencies meant for shadows. Behind the heavy doors, maids are spilling tea. They're shocked he hasn't thrown a tantrum yet. His eavesdropping game is officially elite level. Suddenly, an agonizing spike pierces his skull. Mana depleted. The system forces a total shutdown. The high-def world goes dark. He clutches his throbbing head, realizing extremely limited was no joke. Back when he was a divine sword, his perception was absolute. 360-degree awareness without blind spots. Compared to his past, these new senses are a joke. His god-tier perception, gone with the wind. With his current mana scraps, he's just a guy with better vision and super hearing. For now, he squeezes his fist. Expand the mana pool, evolve the powers. The grind starts today. Growl. His stomach betrays his epic resolve. He's starving. Panicked servants scramble to fetch a feast. Step 1. Survive this fragile meat suit. Then the queen bursts in her eyes, full of worry. She's beaming, calling him her noble son. She's thrilled he finally drank his bitter tonic. She thinks he's finally prioritizing his health. Suddenly, a heavy presence nears. Someone's coming. A grim man in black steps forward his uncle. "Recognize me?" he asks. The prince stays blunt. "Nope." Amnesia confirmed. The queen pleads for her brother's guidance. The prince realizes this man is his only uncle. Scanning him carefully, the uncle scoffs. He doesn't buy the Lost Memory Act for a second. He seems disgusted by the prince's messy past. Fine. It's time for the prince to clear the air. Before the tension can escalate, the uncle bluntly states his only role is helping the prince shed his massive gut. The boy is floored. His uncle warns him not to expect miracles, as he'll provide nothing beyond that basic training. While his sister gratefully accepts the offer, the prince is left standing there completely lost in a sea of confusion. Facing this brutal path, the uncle's icy piercing glare promises a literal nightmare of strict discipline and pain. Hell begins as the boy is slammed into the dirt screaming. The uncle barks that from this moment forward, even breathing requires his express permission. The prince must officially abandon every single royal privilege he ever had. He adds a carrot: if the boy survives this, he might leak a few of the family's secret sword techniques. The prince finds it insulting. How dare this legendary instructor to kings talk down to him like he's garbage? The uncle mocks him, laughing at how his royal fat jiggles with every resentful trembling breath he takes. Snapping, the boy stands tall and throws down a gauntlet. Within 6 months, he vows to earn the man's respect. He's determined to shatter that arrogant gaze. If he fails the bet, he'll become a slave to his uncle's will. But if he succeeds, the uncle must grant him one wish, an idea the older man finds absolutely hilarious. Amused, the uncle accepts the wager, claiming he needs at least one source of entertainment in this dull life. Later, the prince gasps for air during drills, cursing his big mouth and this pathetic, weak shell of a body. Frustration boils over as his sluggish, out-of-shape limbs refuse to obey even the simplest of his mental commands. Suddenly, mana swirls at his feet. He realizes he can burn through his limits by actively incinerating his own fat. He focuses his will using raw energy to melt the weight away. Watching this, the uncle's suspicion begins to grow. When their next spar intensifies, the uncle lunges with a heavy swing that threatens to crush the boy. Instinctively, the boy counters with a burst of mana, leaving the older man completely paralyzed with shock. Blue energy flickers as the prince stands dazed. Stunned, the uncle demands to know if he forged a mana heart. The boy casually admits he did it recently, smugly asking if his uncle is already regretting their little bet. The uncle explodes, asking what kind of idiot would actually craft a mana heart in this modern age. He demands to know who taught him such a mistake, warning the boy he's made a catastrophic amateur blunder. Clueless, the prince just tilts his head in confusion. What could possibly be wrong with such a powerful technique? The uncle drops a bomb. Mana hearts are trash-tier relics, used only by bottom-feeding low-level mercenaries. The prince is paralyzed. The revelation screams through his mind as his internal world completely falls apart. His roar of pure shock echoes across the castle grounds. Later, he sits with his head in his hands, gloomily realizing his ultimate trump card is nothing but a dusty, obsolete relic of a long-forgotten era. His uncle repeats that mana hearts are for scrubs, underlining how out of touch the boy's entire approach is. Cold sweat pours down as the prince absorbs how much the world's meta has evolved without him. Flustered, he demands an explanation. The uncle sighs, deciding a live demonstration is worth 1,000 words. Mana coils around the uncle's hand like a shimmering serpent. He tells the boy to keep his eyes peeled. Through his enhanced vision, the prince sees the mana woven into a perfect razor-sharp ring rather than a clump. A devastating ring slash tears through the air, obliterating the prince's hastily raised defenses in a single blow. Standing amidst the energy fragments, the uncle explains that these advanced structures are called mana chains. These chains easily shatter mana heart energy and are infinitely more stable and efficient to maintain in battle. He adds that the last family to cling to mana hearts went extinct a century ago. No one uses them. Later, the prince studies mana chain theory, finally accepting that he's essentially a dinosaur in this new age. Mages build circles, but knights now weave intricate chains of mana to reach the absolute pinnacle of strength. The book details the ranking system, showing power levels progressing from a single chain all the way to pentachain. Closing the book, he admits the logic is sound. This new system isn't just hype, it's actually superior. He then notices the author's name Altrajan and feels a strange sense of déjà vu washing over him. Suddenly, memories flood back from his past life as a legendary blade. He remembers someone calling for the Sword Saint. He recalls a cloaked warrior, Ernest Altrajan, challenging him to prove who truly deserved the title of the strongest. Back in the present, a smirk touches his lips. No wonder that name sounded so familiar. Slumping over his desk, he finds himself pondering his former enemy's fate. Suddenly, the scene transitions. Sunlight bathes the fortress as a new dawn breaks. In the courtyard, the prince begins drills under watchful knights. His uncle questions if he truly studied the mana chain manual. By now, the boy ought to grasp reality. His decision to cultivate a mana heart was a total blunder. The prince shrugs it off, claiming zero regrets. Visible frustration builds as the uncle wonders if the kid is delusional or just oblivious to his situation. Sparks of energy flicker in the uncle's palm as he clarifies, no two mana hearts are created equal. As azure energy surges, the narrator reflects on a brutal truth, the absolute difference in class between them. Dismissing the boy's words as nonsense, the uncle notes how low-level mercenaries often fantasize about becoming legendary icons. He asks where those dreamers are now. They all peaked at 2 rings before vanishing into total obscurity. To prove his worth, the boy is tasked with toppling a double-chain knight. Succeed, and the uncle becomes protector. It is his mother's wish, but the prince secretly doubts if having this man as a guardian is beneficial. Under the knight's gaze, they square off in the courtyard. The uncle's pride is clearly wounded. He demands to know if his credentials are being questioned. After all, he is a count and army commander. As master of the Black Lancers and a royal silver lion, he unleashes the crushing pressure of 4-ring mana. He stands revealed as a terrifying quad-chain knight. His name is Vale Balarhard, the powerhouse, now backing the prince. He asks if that resume is sufficient. The boy braces for impact as nearby knights instinctively reach for blades. A soldier draws steel in panic. The captain commands the count to back off, and the uncle relents, grinning. The boy warns him not to break his promise. Following a savage sparring session, the drained prince finally collapses. The uncle calls it a day. Later, the boy sprawls across a table, his body trembling from absolute exhaustion. He feels like death is knocking. He recalls his uncle's cruel laughter regarding his desperate search for validation. The man claimed he wasn't even single-chain material. Limping through the corridor, the prince curses his uncle's demonic methods. He returns to his chambers only to find a guest waiting. It is the prestigious royal physician himself. Shocked by the unexpected attention, the boy discovers the queen personally dispatched help to mend his broken body. The doctor prepares radiant healing spells and beckons the boy. Instead, the prince snaps and kicks him out. He refuses the aid, boiling with rage. He won't let today's agonizing pain be rendered meaningless by magic. His bodyguard silently observes the outburst. During dinner, the sharp voice of the third prince rings through the hall. He demands to see his brother before striding in smugly. Our hero just stares intently at his soup. He eyes the intruder, wondering what his deal is. His guard identifies the newcomer as a royal highness. It's the third prince. The sibling expected a tragedy, sounding almost bummed that his brother is still breathing. The boy demands to know his agenda, accusing him of fishing for a fight. The prince lets out a sigh. He internally mocks the idiot who stabbed himself. Keeping his cool, he mentions catching wind of some spicy news. He brings up the wager regarding the double-chain duel. Leaning forward with a predatory smirk, he drops a bombshell. He volunteers to be the one to crush the boy in that duel. Once he leaves, our protagonist broods. With his guard standing by, he curses the warped and twisted bloodline of the Liamborg family. The guard notes Prince Gillian was a child prodigy. He mastered the second ring by age 14, a terrifying pace. He's a total speedster. Suddenly, a panicked maid interrupts him, dumping a mountain of correspondence onto his desk. Every envelope is for him. Confused, he wonders why these nobodies are finally acknowledging his existence now. Baffled, he cracks them open. The maid watches silently as he digs through the massive pile. Most are fake apologies, followed by desperate pleas to be the first in line to fight him. It's clear everyone sees this as a green light to legally thrash him. A dark grin spreads across him. He's the kingdom's punching bag now. Summoning the maid, he demands a list of every single sender. In the training grounds, a wooden sword hits the dirt. The prince stares at it, totally lost. His uncle barks an order to retrieve it. He insists the boy needs actual skills for their wager. He won't tolerate any excuses about poor basics. The prince quietly curses his uncle's stubbornness. He wishes the man was kinder. As he grabs the hilt, his muscles scream in agonizing pain. He lets out a dramatic howl over his sore muscles to dodge training. His uncle halts him, questioning if the healing magic worked. He bluntly explains that nightly healing only mends wounds. It doesn't magically build muscle mass. Magic just restores the status quo, not strength. Still, the veteran warrior softens his stance. Admitting that wasn't today's priority, he reveals there's a far more pressing matter to discuss. Unsheathing his steel, he warns the boy to pay attention. This demonstration happens only once. It's the foundational style for every knight. Primal energy surges through the blade as he readies the strike. His gaze narrows with lethal intent. He unleashes a torrent of heavy fluid slashes that lead into a massive, sweeping blow. Transfixed, the boy watches as the glowing steel carves radiant arcs through the air. With the exhibition ending, his uncle delivers one final bone-chilling cut. The sheer momentum of the strike gouges a massive crater into the earth. Stunned, the boy stammers, asking if this is truly just basic training. His uncle gives him a skeptical look. He notes that while the style lacks finesse, it's perfect for fundamentals, perhaps too advanced for the boy's current level. Suddenly, a strange vibe hits him. He stares in shock. The boy erupts into laughter, completely floored by a sudden world-shaking realization. He recognizes it. This is the legendary Dragon Slayer style that once claimed a mad dragon's head. Fury boils within him. How is this god-tier art now mere basic training? His uncle warns this won't win the bet. He suggests finding a new master later, but the boy snaps back, swearing he'll never learn another style. Because this art is everything. Speechless at such raw resolve, the veteran warrior finally gives in. Telling the boy to have it his way, he watches as the youth grips his wooden sword with white knuckles. Unleashing a heavy overhead strike, he laments how the Dragon Slayer style has been demoted to a simple drill. It makes sense as the current version has lost its soul. He realizes the modern style no longer holds the intent to kill dragons. Those who discard the mana heart and the sword's will can never grasp the style's true power. He continues his relentless drilling, wood thundering against the dirt. His uncle intervenes, barking that stiffening his arms won't generate real power. Did he already forget the lesson? He strikes the boy's gut and legs to expose his glaring openings. True swordsmanship requires channeling full-body momentum, he emphasizes. The boy nods silently. Internally, he curses his weak, uncoordinated body for failing him. He's barely mimicking a hollow shell of the Dragon Slayer. Still, he vows to prove this art isn't obsolete. It's not trash to be thrown away. Days blur into weeks as his footsteps shake the courtyard. He pushes past his limits for 3 grueling days. A week later, his swings are finally gaining stability. Solitary hours are spent cultivating his mana heart with razor-sharp focus. As time flows on, 1 month into this hellish routine system alerts ping. His constitution has evolved, and the morbid obesity trait has downgraded to general obesity with a boosted metabolism. He's finally acclimated to his physical form. The clumsy trait vanishes and his exercise efficiency skyrockets. More notifications flash before his eyes. Relentless mana training has altered his biology. His mana sensitivity disorder is officially cured. It's replaced by heightened sensitivity. His swordplay is now infinitely smoother than 30 days ago. Drenched in sweat, he hoists the blade again. He's stronger today. Every swing feels more flawless than the last. Locked in a trance, he ignores the command to stop and keeps slashing. Steel bites into whetstone, spraying water across the storm-drenched yard as the training persists. Another knight watches as his uncle's palm bleeds, having caught the boy's blade to stop him. Crimson drips onto the mud, revealing the intensity of the duel. The boy finally snaps out of it. Calling weakly to his uncle, he stares in pure horror at the wreckage. Nearby, a massive training post lies shattered by his final strike. The splintered wood bears the mark of an incredibly destructive force. Terrified by his own strength, the boy recoils. His uncle explodes, berating him for training so recklessly. In this storm, a real blade would have killed him, he warns. The boy stares down at his palms, coated in blisters and blood. New system alerts declare he has awakened from a state of hyperfocus. His senses sharpened, unlocking the hyperfocus trait. He let out a breathless laugh at the upgrade. If he overdid it again, he'd likely die from divine retribution. He collapsed, carried off as knights panicked. His uncle stood over him, rain masking his tears. He called him a fool, yet his concern showed. The boy eventually drifted awake in his chambers. Disoriented, he wondered if he'd totally blacked out. He'd pushed this weak body too far. Back when he was a sword, he was a literal war god. Known as the mercenary king and swordmaster, he'd even founded the entire kingdom himself. Leading armies and molding legends, he was Gruhorn, the ultimate teacher of the blade. But as a weapon, he was just an observer. Now he's finally the one swinging the steel. Grateful that his gains were finally his own, he realized he needed to balance mind and spirit. To keep his body from shattering, he began meditating. A month had passed since his mana heart formed. He'd finally gathered enough energy to break through to the next major stage. Radiant blue mana flared as he prepared to evolve. The system recognized his relentless, steady grind. Massive amounts of mana swirled around him. He channeled the surging energy directly into his core. A notification flashed. His vessel could now handle more power. His mana heart had expanded. Testing his control, he gathered blazing mana into his palm. His physique was slowly becoming a tank. The system confirmed his very DNA was rewriting itself thanks to his upgraded mana heart. He snapped his eyes open, stunned by the change. Victory, he'd finally done it. Smirking at a nearby blade, he reached for the hilt. It was time for a test drive. System alert, rank up to Sword Learner. You can now tap into basic aura. With aura, he could finally handle the basics. Outside, a knight warned him about some nasty rumors. Gossip was spreading like wildfire after the prince's reckless public bet, annoying even the royal guard. The knight complained while the prince suggested it was time to find a fresh punching bag. When a noble challenger appeared, the prince just gave a smug smirk. He'd already picked his target. Elsewhere, a young warrior asked to fight weaker knights first. His uncle agreed. Back at the training grounds, the prince asked Carl for that special list. Carl respectfully handed over a folder full of people wanting a piece of the prince. The knight hesitated, asking if the prince really planned to use these haters as practice. He warned that these nobles were out for blood and would likely try to end him. The prince just shrugged. He had a plan. He then asked his uncle to referee the chaos. His only request, don't let anyone actually die. Just a small favor among family. Fast forward to duel day, a nervous young noble stood staring at the massive arena. Taylor Tilheim, a minor baron's son, arrived at the palace fueled by pure, bitter resentment. Flashback time, the old scoundrel prince once ruthlessly mocked Taylor's kin at a royal party. Years ago, Adrian shamed Taylor's family as country bumpkins, destroying their dignity before the entire court. Since then, they'd been the kingdom's biggest laughingstock, and Taylor blamed one person, Adrian Leonberg. Today, Taylor vowed to make that arrogant royal pay for every humiliation. He stepped into the arena, formally introducing himself as the second son of House Tilheim. He was an apprentice knight ready for war, but Adrian just acted like it was a game. Looking chubby and useless, Adrian doubted Taylor was even a knight. Taylor was absolutely fuming. The rumors of Adrian's brainless arrogance were true. The referee had to tell Taylor to chill. Adrian's uncle acknowledged Taylor's rage but told him to save that energy for the actual fight. Taylor's anger vanished instantly. He gasped, seeing the legendary Lord Balinhard right in front of him. He bowed low, totally fanboying over the famous knight. Adrian just watched the awkward scene. Adrian joked that people might actually think his uncle was the prince instead of him. Balinhard scolded him, noting his past trash behavior caused this mess. Adrian just grumbled back. Recalling past sins, Balinhard commands both warriors to their marks and signals the duel's start. Blades lock as the air thickens with tension. Taylor flares his mana chain, bathing himself in a blinding radiance. Power-surging Taylor warns the prince before lunging forward with a devastating aura-infused strike. Steel screams against steel, sending shockwaves through the arena. Taylor immediately pivots into a massive overhead smash. Adrian parries effortlessly, his eyes narrow, analyzing Taylor's sloppy, energy-wasting form with cold precision. Their auras collide mid-air. Suddenly, Taylor's blood runs cold as he detects a hidden mana heart within the prince. Something impossible lurks in Adrian's power. A sudden counterblow shatters Taylor's defense, launching him backward like a ragdoll. Taylor slams into the dirt, the impact cratering the stone beneath. Trembling, he whispers that a mere mana heart shouldn't stand a chance against a mana chain. He wonders if Adrian's single ring is somehow the key. Unfazed, Adrian scoffs that it barely even tickled. Taylor's jaw drops, he can't believe his ears. As the lack of damage sinks in Carl, and the knights catch a haunting sound echoing from the field. A peculiar hum vibrates from Adrian's blade. Balinhard's eyes widen in terror. It's the legendary sword resonance. The blade sings with lethal energy. Taylor's mind reels. This kind of power is absolutely impossible. Screaming in denial, Taylor charges once more, his blade spitting sparks. Adrian blinks, surprised by this desperate surge. A frantic storm of strikes rains down on the prince. Adrian grunts, forced onto the defensive by the onslaught. Taylor bellows, hammering at Adrian's guard, until their conflicting auras detonate in a flash of blinding white light. Boots skid through the grit as the blast pushes someone back. As the haze finally clears, Taylor gasps for air, exhausted, while Adrian stands tall, his blade lowered but his resolve unshaken. Adrian muses on the old law ring mana, and heart mana never mix. He realizes the rumors weren't wrong. Fusing the two feels like a ticking time bomb. His mana heart groans, threatening to shatter under the pressure. Still, he locks eyes with Taylor, asking if he's truly the second son of Baron Tailham. Adrian tells him to chill. Closing his eyes, he dives deep, commanding his senses to sharpen and align. He sinks into a mental abyss, submerged in the depths of his own soul. Reaching through the dark, he commands the beast within to wake. Whether they call his steel a demonic blade, or a sacred sword, the title matters little. Suddenly, a colossal draconic phantom manifests behind him. Embracing the weapon's legendary legacy, Adrian grips the spectral hilt, a blade forged from his very soul. System alert. The mana heart has absorbed a titanic will, pulsing with a new lethal hue. The dormant instinct to slay dragons has awakened the blade's ancient memories of the hunt. Fused with the Slayer's essence, the system announces, the Dragon Slayer's heart has been activated. Adrian's eyes flare a blood-red crimson. A draconic aura snakes around his body, pulsating with raw power. Shrouded in a murderous intent designed only for killing gods of the sky, his true power awakens. Legendary energy floods from heart to steel. Taylor stares paralyzed by sheer unadulterated horror. As the blood-red dragon towers over him, Taylor trembles, his mind breaking at the sight. Balarhard sees the lethal intent and screams for an end before the berserker rage consumes the arena. Adrian lunges for the kill. A flicker of memory shows him asking his uncle for one desperate favor. If I lose control, stop me. Now, in the present, that lethal blow descends with terrifying speed. Remembering his vow, Balarhard intercepts, charging in with a force that dwarfs everyone present. To save his nephew from himself, their collision blasts Adrian backward, shattering the earth beneath them. Balarhard stands amidst swirling dust, having crushed the rampage. Adrian lies broken against the ruined masonry. Looking down at his feet, Balarhard turns. His heavy hand has finally silenced the dragon's roar. Knights swarm with bared steel shouting treason. Shaking, Adrian stumbles up and commands them to stand down. He explains that he ordered this intervention. He grumbles, though, that he never actually told his uncle. To beat him into a pulp. Smirking through the pain, he jokes that being KO'd wasn't the plan. As the crowd stands frozen, Adrian's mana heart thrums wildly, still overflowing with volatile energy. Gasping for air, he realizes just how close his mana heart came to completely detonating. Adrian realized his uncle's power eclipsed any standard knight. Taking that massive strike directly was a wake-up call. Checking his torso, he exhaled, relieved that the devastating impact left no permanent damage behind. Despite the brush with death, a grin surfaced. Victory made the risk entirely worth it. Relaxing later, a question about his mysterious smirk jolts Adrian back to reality. Balinhart stormed in, fuming, as he demanded an explanation for Adrian's reckless display. Labeling the technique a wicked blade, Balinhart questioned its origin. Adrian remained unshaken. He claimed he was simply pursuing the sword's true core. Deep down, Balinhart hesitated. Scoffing at the lack of battle experience, the veteran realized Adrian's perspective was chilling. To Adrian, the blade meant pure lethality, a dark yet undeniable fragment of reality. Balinhart admitted this was a valid path, catching Adrian completely off guard. Adrian expected a lecture on chivalry, not an endorsement of his brutal philosophy. As a soldier, first Balinhart prioritized absolute victory over empty moral high grounds. Adrian focused as his uncle dropped a chilling warning his blade was crossing a line. Unchecked bloodlust would eventually blind him, turning allies into targets. Adrian had a retort ready. He countered that this lecture was just a hidden attempt at guidance. Balinhart promised close observation. He'd see if Adrian mastered his demons or became their puppet. 3 days flew by. Following 72 hours of sparring, Adrian called Taylor out for their final confrontation. He praised Taylor's grit through the hellish training. Throughout those grueling sessions, Taylor survived a relentless barrage of raw, murderous aura. He'd truly been through the ringer. Feeling slight pity, he joked that Taylor was likely desperate for just one win. Yet victory remained elusive. Adrian then summoned a maid to present a lavish chest. Trembling, the maid brought it forward. Adrian acknowledged the former prince's horrific reputation. Recognizing the atrocities committed against Taylor's kin, he offered this as a peace offering. He ordered Taylor to deliver gold and a letter home. Safe travels, he added warmly. Cleaning up the original prince's mess wasn't mandatory, but loyal service deserved proper rewards. Amidst Taylor's tearful thanks, news of their duel spread like wildfire across the realm. Petty nobles whispered, salivating at the thought of the prince finally facing public disgrace. Their anticipated scandal never broke. Instead, a shocking new narrative began to circulate. Rumors shifted. It was just a misunderstanding. Adrian proved far more noble than anyone imagined. Backed by key witnesses, Adrian's sincerity held firm. Schemers claimed Taylor was simply bought off. Hearing the lies, Adrian slammed his fist, his rage toward the nobility boiling over. He roared that Taylor's silence was pure embarrassment from losing. These parasites were truly pathetic. He vented about their lack of work, earning a dry remark from his unimpressed uncle. Later, Adrian's blazing aura nearly paralyzed a trembling official, clutching a heavy chest. He coerced the man into broadcasting the actual duel results to every corner of society. Thinking the fire was extinguished, news arrived that he'd supposedly blackmailed Taylor. Stunned, he heard claims of a staged fight. The public believed he'd threatened Taylor's life. Speechless and brooding, he tuned out the noise, channeling his frustration back into his blade. He dove into hellish training, carving massive aura-infused arcs through the training ground air. Repeated strikes honed his lethality. Every swing became a symphony of sharp fluid destruction. Azure light danced behind his blade as he unleashed a limit-breaking. The scene narrowed onto his glowing steel as it practically ripped the atmosphere apart. Fueled by raw ambition, the prince ignited his blue mana, ready for the next slaughter. Questioning Carl about the remaining fodder, he learned his final opponent had finally arrived. Mere apprentices were no longer worth his time. Carl signaled the arrival of the ultimate challenger. He's a true blue knight who ditched his family style to grind for real strength. Scrutinizing the dossier, the prince realizes his rival is just a top-tier probationary member. The elite Iron Lion Knights send their best, the legendary challenger Arwen Kyrgian. Sentries confirm the armored beauty rocking the Iron Lion crest is the hyped-up rookie. Known as the Flower of the Cliff, Arwen's a lethal rose who's shattered countless hearts. She enters the courtyard, her steps heavy with intent, as the guards start simping hard. They can't believe she'd willingly duel the prince while Arwen keeps her poker face icy. Stealing her nerves, she whispers that this fated showdown is finally here. Bystanders wonder if the prince is about to get cooked by this famous warrior woman. The Iron Lion Knights stand as the kingdom's peak force of elite monster slayers. Arwen is the ultimate prodigy, whose promotion to full knighthood is already a lock. The prince panics, wondering why a literal genius is thirsty to catch his fade. Carl hints at a dark past, and the prince realizes he's got major skeletons. Suspecting his past self was trash, he begs a maid to reveal his old crimes. Stuttering with fear, the maid reveals the prince once straight-up harassed Lady Arwen. Disgusted by his past life's toxicity, the reincarnated prince loses it and curses himself. Flashbacks show the old prince being a creep, grabbing Arwen and leering at her. He tried to force her into service, but she cold-shouldered him like a total boss. She barked that knights aren't toys, triggering the old prince's massive ego-fueled tantrum. He insulted her looks in a fit of rage, while the new prince listens horrified. It was the ultimate scoundrel move, a twisted, toxic attempt at courting a goddess. Looking at her now, he realizes she's stunning, admiring her sharp, dignified aura. Dazzled by her presence, Arwen greets him coldly, noting he hasn't changed a bit. He awkwardly stammers that he's actually a totally different soul under the surface. Facing her icy glare, he prepares for the karma train to hit. Count Balinhart enters. The count arrives to ref the match, but freezes when he sees Arwen's face. With perfect grace, Arwen introduces herself as the Iron Lion's rising star. The count warns her the prince is dangerous, making him whine about the blatant bias. It's time. The count signals both fighters to take their marks for the clash. Arwen steps up, cold and ready, as Balinhart bellows for the duel to commence. On the signal, Arwen blurs forward, hand on hilt, staying low and lethal. The prince smirks, ready to test her hype as Arwen explodes into a sprint. She leaps in a flash of blue, swinging an overhead strike with terrifying power. Her movement is cracked, their blades collide, unleashing a shockwave of blue mana. His mana starts spiraling out of control as Arwen locks him in a brutal crossguard. He grunts under the pressure, swinging wildly while she counters from her low stance. Arwen unleashes a rapid-fire flurry, her blade becoming a blur that pins him down. Under her relentless pressure, he realizes he's being toyed with like a beginner. Time to switch gears. Arwen charges her blade with a massive blue mana flare. The prince counters, igniting his secret weapon, the Crimson Dragon Slayer's heart. Red-eyed spectators gasp at the sudden aura shift as the prince charges head-on. A massive red shockwave erupts, slamming into Arwen and blasting her through the air. Reeling, she recovers instantly, noticing something weirdly powerful about his glowing blade. He admits Arwen's a beast, she's tiers above any normal single-ring mana user. Scanning her stats, he sees a competitive prodigy with a heart of pure steel. Fueled by the Dragon Slayer's heart, the prince stands bloodied, his focus unbreakable. Realizing he only has limited authority, he notes Arwen's power is actually on his level. Arwen's blue aura flares again. Defiant, the prince concludes she's either his equal or slightly weaker. He decides to stop holding back. Both warriors charge trailing streaks of crimson and azure energy. Declaring the real fight starts now, the prince eventually staggers, gasping and covered in bruises. Arwen is equally drained from the clash. They lock eyes in the arena as the sun sets. 3 days and their blades finally slip, as pure exhaustion takes a heavy toll on them. Count Balinhart calls time, postponing this epic showdown until tomorrow morning. The prince clicks his tongue, claiming he was about to win. Arwen smirks, saying victory was hers. Their rivalry blazes as they try to keep fighting, but Balinhart roars, "That's enough." Halting the madness, he notes the hour and commands both to get healed immediately. A healer sprints to the prince, vowing to fix him up, while fretting over every fresh bruise. The prince watches another healer treat Arwen, who looks visibly shaken while stealing a glance back. They depart in silence, heading opposite ways. Walking away, Arwen makes a silent vow to never lose. Losing isn't an option. Narration notes that after days of carnage, no victor has appeared yet. The Iron Lion Knights whisper about day 3, shocked the prince is still standing. One knight admits Arwen is the real deal, but the first prince's skills are straight-up legendary. Balinhart prays for a conclusion today. Before they clash, the prince says he has something to say. Arwen anticipates an apology and warns him she won't accept any words of regret. She insists no apology fixes the past. The prince realizes she's just desperate for her pride. He clarifies that's not his point. Instead, he proposes cranking up the stakes for this duel. He suggests a bet the loser must grant the winner a single absolute wish. That includes kneeling or apologizing. Arwen stands there weighing the danger of this risky condition. Carl and the crew freak out over such stakes, but the prince completely brushes them off. He asks Arwen for her answer. She responds with the formal grace of a loyal Leonberg knight. She can't easily accept a wager that risks his honor, unless the wish stays within his boundaries. She accepts the bet. Shrouded in crimson aura again, the prince calls her choice a wise one. Arwen lunges forward, shouting for him to keep his word. Soon, their blades collide in fury. Amidst a cyclone of red and blue, Arwen unleashes a colossal tidal wave of azure energy. The prince's eyes burn red with rage as he counters, launching a lethal crimson strike at her. Forced to block, Arwen gasps in shock. He's moving way faster than he was just yesterday. With the Dragon Slayer's heart ignited, a spectral dragon roars behind him, leaving observers in awe. Had he been hiding this, crimson and azure forces explode as they trade world-shattering blows. The shockwave blasts them back. Arwen takes a brutal hit, her face twisting in pain. Trying to stay guarded, she charges again, but the prince swings a red arc that shreds the earth. Breathless Arwen survives the onslaught, refusing to yield. The prince hammers her with relentless crimson attacks. Their energies ignite in a blinding final clash. The impact sends their blades flying aside. In one final explosion, Arwen collapses to one knee broken, while the prince somehow stays upright. The knights are speechless. Balorheart can't believe how much the prince has evolved so quickly. Shaking, Arwen mutters in pure denial that this outcome could even be real. The prince approaches calmly, declaring that by their wager, the victory is his. Looming over the defeated Arwen, he prepares to name his wish, a small, knowing smile on his face. Arwen's heart stops as he claims he wants her. Carl later notes being a guard was surprisingly chill. Flashback to when Carl first met the prince, pledging his blade and loyalty to his new master. Carl remembers that beneath that mask of royal arrogance, the prince hid a far deeper secret. Forget the rumors, he wasn't the monster everyone claimed. Carl watches the prince solo grind, his blade flashing through the courtyard. Trash talk aside, Carl starts questioning his own bias. One rainy midnight, he and the other knights gather in the shadows. They witness the prince training like a man possessed in the downpour. A subordinate whispers they should stop him before he breaks. Carl rushes in, screaming for the prince to be careful. Suddenly, the prince's blade erupts with a blinding golden explosion. The strike shatters the dummy. Carl stands frozen as the drenched prince grins through the lingering sparks. Those wide eyes say it all, the prince is elite. Carl feels the very gears of fate beginning to shift. He knew then, this man was destined for greatness. Back in the present, Carl reflects on those old memories. I want you, the prince tells Arwen. The knights lose their minds. Is this some kind of public confession? Carl wonders if he's being played. Arwen, gasping for air, stares him down. Is that really what you want? She demands to know the truth behind his bold claim. The prince doesn't blink, giving it to her straight. Look at you, he scoffs. You're just a rookie who can't even touch a scoundrel prince like me. The prize he's after isn't her, it's her future. He's hunting Arwen Kurgane's hidden legendary potential. He needs a real knight, someone who follows him by choice, not because a king ordered it. No royal chains allowed. He wants a blade that belongs to him and him alone. He sees that fire in her. With absolute certainty, he tells her she's a genius with the sword. To him, Arwen Kurgane is the only choice. Right then, he officially asks her to become his knight. As the sun dips low, Arwen recalls her dream coming true, serving that childlike, mysterious prince. A new chapter begins. Everyone notices it. Arwen is even more stunning than the rumors suggested. But beauty was a curse. Since no one recognized her skill, she worked twice as hard as any man. During training, she's a beast, pinning her opponent to the dirt at sword point. Another flawless victory. Arwen Kurgane wins again. She clears the entire field with overwhelming skill, but she isn't finished yet. Steel clashes again as she dives into another spar. Match after match, her results are nothing short of elite. Yet the other knights just see a poster girl. They think escorting a beauty is just a lucky break. It stings. She's still just eye candy to them. Arwen wavers, her heart caught in a storm of doubt. She weighs his proposal, a future where she's valued as a warrior. Is this prince actually sincere? Under the sunset glow, she makes her move. She has one ultimate solemn request for the prince. Don't see me as a woman. See me as a knight. If he agrees, her life is his. Silence hangs heavy as the prince considers her terms. Arwen holds her breath, waiting for his response. He gives his word. He'll honor her as a true knight. Arwen steps forward and drops to one knee. As the eldest of House Kurgane, she begins the sacred oath of loyalty to Prince Adrian Leonberg. She pledges her blade and her soul to his service. The surrounding knights are absolutely floored. Even the black-armored commander is speechless. Adrian, standing as the rightful heir, officially dubs her his knight. As she kneels, he recites the knightly virtues. The ceremony ends with one final ironclad command. Stay brave, stay loyal. Later at the academy, Arwen's lightning-fast movements turn every single head. The haters are already whispering. Serving a scoundrel prince is insane. They want to void the oath immediately. Suspicion spreads like wildfire. Did Arwen refuse help because she's secretly involved with the prince? The rumors get nasty. People think Adrian is using the oath as cover for a secret mistress. Why would she even accept his duel? Adrian hears the trash talk and finally snaps in pure frustration. Am I the villain here? He roars. Everyone treats him like human garbage. Carl just watches in silence. Then Carl speaks up. He wants to circle back to something the prince said a long time ago. He mentions a specific comment from the day of the duel, one that Adrian has already forgotten. Carl recalls his wish for a knight who follows their heart, not just a royal decree. Carl asks if that truth was offensive. After all, a forced knight would just walk away eventually. Adrian shrugs it off. Swear your oath whenever you want. Carl finds his nerve for one last question. Would you actually accept my oath too? Adrian pivots, delivering a cold rejection. He flatly admits raising Carl offers zero satisfaction. Carl just cracks a grin, brushing off the frost. Hiding his pain behind annoyance, Adrian doubles down. This is no joke. His dismissal is absolute. Suddenly, a royal decree arrives, shattering his isolation. His probation is over, and an invitation to the grand banquet awaits. Scratching his head in confusion, he wonders if he pulled some strings unconsciously. Ending his house arrest 6 weeks early, totally sus. Memories of the king's cold gaze resurface a man who once seemed thrilled to rot him away in that palace forever. This sudden shift reeks of trouble. Pacing the halls, Adrian whispers to himself, unable to decode the king's hidden agenda. A maid chirps, asking if he's thrilled to be free. Adrian's response, a nonchalant shrug and a whatever. Freedom is hollow when you've got zero friends and nowhere to go. His blunt honesty leaves the maid visibly shaken. Fumbling an apology, she reveals a stray invitation meant for him. Adrian blinks, repeating the word like he's misheard. An invitation. For him, the maid presents an elegant high-end card, proving the mystery mail is the real deal. He scans the ink. It's a call to an elite social club for high-ranking heirs. The maid fills in the blanks. Turns out he was a regular there. Shook, Adrian asks if the vibe is weird, making the maid pause awkwardly. She describes a den of excess where young elites drown in booze and chase bizarre high-class thrills. So it's just a playground for booze and skirts. Adrian scoffs, preferring the sweat of the training grounds instead. Why waste time on trash? But just as he's about to toss it, a detail on the envelope stops him cold. He spots a flowery note from a loyal bestie, Bernardo, of the House of Eli. The name Eli hits him like a lightning bolt. He repeats it, recalling the grim tales his uncle once whispered. House Eli, the stubborn guardians of the Mana heart tradition. They held the line until their total collapse a century ago. Suddenly the party doesn't seem so boring. His interest piqued, Adrian decides it's time to make an appearance. As the maid preps his gear, Adrian folds the card secretly, hoping the Eli legacy hasn't completely faded into ash. 4 months have flown by since he hijacked the trashy prince's body and started his hardcore weight loss grind. A tailor beams while unveiling custom threads. True to his vibe, Adrian's new look is draped in sleek midnight black. No gaudy gold here, just clean, sharp lines. As the tailor brags, the design is simple yet undeniably fierce. It screams royal authority. Checking his reflection, Adrian nods. The before and after is actually insane. The tailor gasps. His size has literally been sliced in half. Impressed, Adrian puts his banquet fit in the man's hands. The tailor is itching to sew, but Adrian holds him back. Why? Because this transformation is far from finished. With a smirk, he guarantees his frame will be even leaner by the time the banquet lights go up. Days later, Adrian rolls up in a carriage, heading straight for that notorious den of elite pampered brats. Carl stands guard like a hawk outside the carriage. Inside, Adrian yawns, grumbling about how draining the royal life is. The stiff clothes and constant guards feel like a cage. Then his sharp eyes catch something wrong with his maid. Spotting a jagged scar peeking from Adelia's shoulder, he doesn't hold back. He demands to know where that mark came from. Adelia trembles, blaming her own failure during one of the prince's past brutal outbursts. As she takes the fall, Adrian is repulsed. The former prince was a monster, and the receipts keep piling up. Staring at the terrified girl, guilt hits him. He doesn't even know her name. Finally, after months, he asks. She jumps, stammering the name Adelia Byron. Adrian freezes. That last name. It rings a very loud bell. He remembers the Byrons are a noble bloodline lost to time. He can't believe fate has brought this name back. The tale drifts back to an age before thrones, a wild era where diverse races warred for every inch of land. Dwarves and orcs ruled the battlefield while fragile humans were nothing but prey destined for slaughter and ruin. But legends emerged from the ashes of human suffering. At the war's peak, these saviors changed the world's destiny. Known as the Five Electors, they crowned humanity the apex species. Now one legendary figure steps into the light. Meet Gruhorn, the crimson-haired blade master. Beneath a sky of fire, she stares down an unseen foe with cold steel. Amidst a sea of monstrous giants, she wonders what happens when the blood stops flowing. What comes after victory? When the smoke clears, Her eyes burn with absolute resolve as she dives headfirst into the chaotic slaughter. Soaring toward the Colossus, she cleaves through Ida the Giant King, bringing their reign of terror to an end. Centuries of human slavery end here. Her blade rends the giant's massive frame in a final glorious finish. Meet Agnes Byron, the legendary iron-blooded sword marquis. Amidst the absolute carnage, a chilling smirk plays on her lips. Scarred and fierce, she stands amidst giant corpses as more enemies charge. Her hair flies wild in the heat of battle. Fury ignites in her eyes. She's about to snap. Agnes ruthlessly mocks the giants for crawling back like scavengers hunting for prey. "You depraved gluttons," she screams, tearing through their ranks while spitting out a relentless barrage of venomous insults. Her rage explodes into censored profanities about these monsters. Just then, the gem on her sword flashes ominously. The echoes of her curses fade as Adrian jolts back to reality. He's low-key disgusted by her incredibly foul mouth. Seriously, his ears feel polluted. He looks back at Adelia, baffled how a Byron descendant could turn out like this. Staring at the shy maid, he can't wrap his head around how such a legendary bloodline fell so hard. Carl interrupts, announcing their arrival. Peering inside the carriage, he addresses the prince once more to get his attention. "Perfect timing," Carl Adrian says, stepping out. He immediately marches away from the carriage, heading straight for the club entrance. He leaves a stunned Adelia behind with a quick, "We'll talk later." She just stands there, watching them walk away. Girl is literally surrounded by question marks, totally lost. Meanwhile, at the entrance, a silver-haired young noble appears. He greets Adrian with a huge grin, introducing himself as Bernardo of the prestigious Eli family. After asking how he's been, Bernardo gushes about how relieved he is that Adrian's safe. But Adrian isn't buying it. This Eli heir looks like a total punk to him. Bernardo notes that Adrian's gotten thin, assuming he's suffered a lot. The prince grows quiet before letting out a dark, creepy chuckle. A spooked Bernardo immediately asks if he's okay. Adrian waves it off, claiming he's fine. With a wicked smirk, he adds that coming here might be a vibe. He claps Bernardo on the shoulder, promising the day will be peak entertainment. Bernardo instantly feels a literal chill. He stares at Adrian's creepy reaction, totally confused. Inside, the other nobles are already busy gossiping and sharing trashy stories. Men laugh loudly while flirting with the ladies, making cringe comments, while the women pretend to be annoyed. The scene pans out to a luxurious salon, filled with nobles, feasting and drinking like there's no tomorrow. Adrian and Bernardo join the chaos. Internally, Bernardo realizes that Adrian is acting super sus tonight. Instead of his usual drunken playboy vibes, Adrian's aura feels completely different, dangerous even. While the prince chillfully sips his drink, the peace shatters as another noble decides to approach him. This smug noble leans in with a shady grin, mentioning that everyone's talking about Adrian's latest move. Rumor has it he claimed Arwen, the legendary flower of the Iron Lion. Adrian stays silent, just listening. The others whine about being too slow, salty, that they didn't snatch Arwen's oath for them. A sleazy noble starts undressing Arwen with his eyes, making vile comments about what's hidden beneath her steel armor. Adrian cuts him off mid-sentence coldly, asking if the man has sisters at home, catching the creep completely off guard. "Good," Adrian mutters, noting his own younger brother's existence. "That's actually very fortunate for your family line." Before the noble can even blink, Adrian's fist blurs through the air, aimed straight for his smug face. Bam! A devastating punch connects. The man's head snaps back as blood sprays, sending him spiraling onto the floor in agony. Shards of glass fly, and red wine stains the rug like blood. The room falls into a horrified, breathless silence. Bernardo watches in pure terror, unable to speak. Adrian just stands there icy, repeating how lucky it is the man's lineage won't end, meaning he's about to lose his manhood. With zero hesitation, Adrian delivers a savage, bone-shattering kick right between the man's legs. Time stops as the prince looms over the whimpering mess. Suddenly, a bitter memory flashes back the day his father disinherited him, replaced by his brother like garbage. That old rage ignites his soul. Once more, he pulls back his fist. Another heavy blow crunches against the man's jaw. The audience flinches, unable to watch the prince's sheer, unbridled brutality. Bernardo scrambles to stop him, but he's too slow. Adrian hauls the bleeding noble up by his collar, refusing to let him collapse. "Why? Why are you doing this?" the broken man wheezes. Adrian leans in his shadow, engulfing the noble's trembling form. "Listen well," Adrian whispers. "He's done being treated like some lowly thug, while these cowards look down on him. People can call him a villain all they want, but he won't be disrespected." The onlookers exchange confused, terrified glances. Basically, you haven't bled enough yet. With that, the prince resumes the beatdown with even more intensity. One final strike sends the noble flying across the hall. The prince stands tall amidst the wreckage, his presence suffocating the room. The noble is a bloody pulp on the floor. Adrian barks a command for Eli, who rushes over, trembling in total submission. A dark smirk plays on Adrian's lips. "Told you, today would be fun." Eli's heart races, terrified by his master's sudden shift. Why is he being so reckless? Summon the royal knights. "Now," Adrian orders. Eli shouts his obedience and bolts out. The hall plunges into a heavy, suffocating silence. The prince stands alone in the center, a storm waiting to break. Blood splatters his face as he stands over the broken noble, looking completely unbothered, like he's just finished a light workout. "Ladies, leave us," he commands. One noble tries to sneak out with them, his knees shaking like leaves in the wind. As the guy inches toward the door, Adrian's voice cuts through him. "I believe I only dismissed the women. Any man who leaves this room now," Adrian warns, "will only do so after I've turned him into a woman." The men pale, instantly getting the hint. Surrounded by the elite youth of the kingdom, the prince now holds absolute power. He steps forward with predator-like grace. He remembers every single time these brats refused to bow to him. They never showed respect, and some even dared to laugh in his face. It was time for a little reality check. "And you insulted my knight," he growls. Turning to the entering guards, he asks what the penalty is for such arrogance. The heavy clank of armor fills the room. Insulting a member of the royal family, a knight recites, is a grave crime. It's more than a rude comment, it's an assault on the crown itself. The commander steps forward, his voice booming with authority. "This is treason." The knights look to Adrian, waiting for the order to strike. The prince wears a truly wicked grin. "Make them all kneel," he commands. Shortly after, Adrian finds himself standing before the king, summoned for his little incident. "You just finished probation, and you do this," the king roars. 14 children from high-ranking families are currently in chains. They're facing treason charges, and the king is fuming. "Do you have any idea what kind of mess you've made, Adrian? Sure, they disrespected the crown, but sparking a war with 14 noble houses, that's political suicide." Adrian just shrugs. "Are you scared of some angry letters? Those kids are just dead weight their families barely tolerate anyway. Just send some letters to fix it," the prince suggests coolly. The king blinks in confusion. "Letters to who?" "To the people who actually want those idiots gone," Adrian explains with a cold, calculating look. He means their ambitious siblings, the ones waiting for a chance to take over. "Tell me, father, am I wrong?" Speechless, the king waves him away. Adrian exits the throne room with a triumphant smirk, leaving his father in the dust. Later, Adrian finds a maid trembling in the hall. He gives her a surprisingly soft smile, promising he's not there to bite. Still shaking, she stammers out a question. What did I do wrong, Your Highness? Why was I called?" He lowers his voice to a gentle hum to soothe her nerves. "Relax. I just need your help with a little project." He reassures her once more, but the poor girl is still terrified of the prince who just dismantled the nobility. Adrian feels a sharp sting of regret. His past scoundrel self must have put this girl through absolute hell. Her house is noble in name, only clinging to the shadows of poverty. Even her own kin have forgotten their legendary bloodline. Their heroic legacy was scrubbed from history. Their divine martial arts, severed and buried in the sands of time. The pride of that lineage vanished long ago. But then a system window flickers to life, revealing Adelia's god-tier talent for mana. She's a diamond in the rough with terrifying traits, butcher war, maniac, and fragile heart. But the kicker, a slave mentality. Adrian's heart skips a beat. He forces himself to breathe desperately, trying to process the contradictory mess of stats before him. He stares at the screen. These traits are a ticking time bomb, lethal, conflicting, and utterly dangerous. Her dark traits crave blood and the heat of battle, yet she remains hauntingly gentle and kind. She's a born nurturer, yet psychologically bound to serve. She has world-class talent, but zero mental shields to hold back the insanity. Without a leash for her madness, she's a walking disaster. Adrian wonders, is unleashing this unstable powerhouse truly a good idea? After a moment of agonizing doubt, he makes his choice. He has to take this gamble. He steels his resolve, accepting the burden of her power. S-rank talent like this is simply too legendary to let rot. He spots a silver lining. One specific trait might just be the key to keeping her under control. Slave mentality, a cursed trait where one finds bliss in absolute servitude. Adrian locks eyes with Adelia and commands her to swear her life to him. She stammers in confusion, her voice trembling. "Be my knight," he declares bluntly, "and swear the oath right now." Her world spins. She insists a lowly maid like herself could never dream of such a prestigious, high-ranking role. "I'll take responsibility for your family," he vows. "In exchange, I demand your absolute, unwavering loyalty." He leans in his voice, dropping to a whisper. "If you can't control the demons inside you, then I'll do it for you." "Will you truly protect them?" she asks, searching his eyes. With a firm, solemn nod, he confirms the pact. He even offers to bring her kin to the capital, a gesture that finally breaks her resolve. Adelia Byron, the eldest daughter, yields. She drops to her knees, formally pledging her soul to Prince Adrian Liemberg. Her entire life now belongs to him. Adrian gives a cold, simple nod. Placing a hand on her head, he declares that her only duty now is total obedience. "I will obey," she whispers. As his hand lingers, a deep crimson flush creeps across her face. She clasps her hands in devout earnestness. Watching her, Adrian can't help but wonder, was recruiting this girl the right move? The palace begins to whisper. Rumors fly that the trash prince is back, using dirty tricks to force a girl into service. The gossip turns darker tales of him beating noble children and locking them away, spread through the streets like wildfire. He's making a maid his personal knight, the nobles scoff. They're convinced he's just building a harem for his own pleasure. Hearing the noise, Adrian just sighs. Since when did everyone become so obsessed with my life, he grumbles. He vents to his knight commander, annoyed that taking in just one personal guard has caused such an endless headache. The king isn't happy either, scolding him for stirring political drama. Meanwhile, a royal elder brands his behavior as utterly pathetic. His royal brother joins in, laughing at the idea of a maid knight. So typical of someone like you, he sneers. Adrian just rubs his temples, lamenting how lightning-fast, toxic rumors travel through the royal court. The queen has arrived, a guard announces. Adrian lets out a heavy, soul-deep sigh of pure exasperation. The queen tears into him for relapsing into his old, trashy habits, but then a chilling smile crosses her face. Actually, this suits my plans, she purrs. Once you have a bride, you'll finally stop wandering and settle down. She beams, promising to handpick the perfect bride herself. Just trust your mother, she orders with a sharp glint in her eye. Adrian sits in stunned silence as she leaves. Later, a nervous Adelia speaks up. Will, I truly gain mana now. Yes, Adrian confirms, his gaze intensifying. And I'm going to grant you a very special kind of power. He begins the ritual, channeling deep blue energy, while a brilliant golden aura explodes around Adelia's trembling frame. He reaches into his memories, pulling forth the forgotten legacy of the Sword Marquis and every intricate detail of his divine arts. He remembers the trail of fire that legend left behind. He can almost see her blade dancing effortlessly through the air. He envisions a golden silhouette, the ancient master placing hands upon Adelia, as if passing on a sacred ancient torch. The golden energy swirls and condenses, finally crystallizing into a powerful mana heart beating within her chest. Ding, Adelia Byron has successfully sensed mana. The system message rings out with triumphant clarity. Final notifications flood in. The prince has successfully imprinted the mana, and it has fully integrated into her body. A system alert flashes, the impossible has happened, and a mana heart finally beats within her. Adelia gazes at the shimmering aura, dancing around her skin, mesmerized by the raw, glowing essence of mana. The prince reveals that his secret technique forged that core, commanding her to master it through relentless practice. Drained to his limit, he stumbles forward as she cries out in panic. He secretly realizes forming even one heart nearly broke him. He brushes off the bone-deep fatigue while she wonders why he'd risk everything for a lonely soul like hers. He dismisses her with a cold word, but stops when he catches her intense, lingering gaze. He awkwardly asks why she's staring, but she simply drops into a deep bow, swearing her life to his service. A smirk plays on his lips as he reminds her who's the boss, and she eagerly pledges her eternal obedience. She shouts her affirmation as he walks away, though he secretly worries she might one day forget their hierarchy. Seeing her watch him with those fanatical glowing eyes, he realizes that his concern is probably justified. Days later, the Knight Commander arrives to drop an update regarding the situation with Bernardo Eli. He explains that Eli is currently under max security by the Royal Guard, locked away until the upcoming trial. The prince groans at the thought of attending, but is reminded that royalty is basically above the law. Talk about a win. He still thinks holding a massive trial for that incident is a total overreaction. Turning to Adelia, he catches her off guard by checking if her new mana heart has stabilized yet. She confirms she's ready, and he declares that her days of playing house are over. Training starts now. He tells her to ditch the maid rags and gear up because she's officially entering the training grounds. Out on the field, the prince begins his morning routine, his body moving with practiced rhythmic precision. He's interrupted by his grumpy instructor and wonders what the old man is even doing there. The instructor points toward the yard, where Adelia is decked out in heavy armor grinding out laps. The prince just shrugs, confirming the rumors that he's actually fast-tracking this girl to knighthood. The instructor absolutely loses it, screaming that the title of knight isn't some cheap gift to hand out. He rants about the political heat, but the prince just rolls his eyes at all the annoying meddling. The prince fires back, asking why the guy keeps showing up if he hates the training so much. A breathless Adelia collapses after 10 brutal laps, both men watching her like hawks to judge her limits. She starts apologizing for being a burden, but he just shuts her up by tossing her a practice sword. Today is all about the basics. He squared his shoulders and drops into a perfect, lethal starting stance. He demonstrates a clean, powerful swing and tells her to mirror his movement exactly. She grips the wood with shaky hands, but the moment she settles, her eyes go cold and sharp. Boom, she explodes forward, mimicking his strike with a level of force that's absolutely terrifying. The instructor's jaw hits the floor, and the prince is internally screaming. She copied him perfectly on the first try. When she asks if she did it right, the prince has to pause just to stop his brain from lagging. He realizes that if he slacks off, this girl is going to surpass his skill in no time. He remembers how the original trash prince used to torment her, fueling her obsessive need to obey strength. He gets a dark vision of her pointing that sword at him and just lets out a nervous hum. The instructor is buzzing, realizing she's a once-in-a-generation talent, which immediately puts the prince on high alert. He gets defensive, demanding to know what kind of moves the instructor thinks he's pulling. He warns the man to keep his hands off the girl, his possessive side coming out in full force. The knight mocks him, flexing blue mana and calling the prince a rookie who can't handle a beast like her. The pressure is insane, but the prince stands tall, refusing to run like his old, cowardly self would have. He decides right then that if she's too much for him, he'll just have to break his own limits. His aura flares into a massive blue inferno. If he can't tame this girl, then nobody on Earth can. He roars that he's tasted the blood of giant kings and dragons, and his cursed sword, Gruhorn, is ready. A system alert chimes. A fragment of the sword's ancient dark soul is beginning to manifest through him. His eyes burn a demonic red as the spirit overlays his body, leaving the knight staring in pure shock. Crimson mana erupts as the youth is swathed in a bloody aura, claiming her as his own. Overwhelmed by a dark obsession, he bellows at the knight that the girl is strictly his property. No one dares lay eyes on her. With chilling intensity, he declares his absolute hatred for thieves. The knight falters, shielding the armored girl, while the youth's gaze shifts into a terrifying red slit. The madness recedes, leaving him cold as reality blurs, dragging him into a suffocating, watery abyss. Trapped in a frozen void, he feels no pulse of life, questioning if this darkness is a warning. He panics. Grohan's soul is consuming his weak frame as ghostly hands tighten their lethal grip. Enough. A powerful voice booms and a surge of blue mana shatters the encroaching darkness. Standing firm in the courtyard, blue aura flickering, an ancient proverb echoes in his mind. While common knights save 10 men, the commander insists an elite warrior can save 100. And she'll save thousands. The youth stares, weighing the man's heavy words and hidden agenda. Is this a noble crusade for the North? He scoffs, telling his uncle he couldn't care less. His uncle fumes, what if she's the world's savior? But the girl instantly shuts him down. My life and soul are the prince's. The uncle stands frozen, silenced by her unwavering loyalty. The youth smirks. His gamble paid off as her submissive nature bonds her to him forever. He teases that the uncle's training was just cardio, asking if the man has real skills. Visit if you must, he warns, but keep your nose out of my private business. The uncle begrudgingly yields, though he can't help but return to the palace like a ghost. Shadowing Adelia's drills, the once mighty commander's discomfort gives the youth a wicked sense of joy. Bound by silence, the uncle watches as Adelia's training sword suddenly ignites with brilliant gold light. She strikes her blade wreathed in a blinding golden flare that leaves the veteran knight absolutely reeling. Has she mastered sword resonance already? He beams, applauding her genius with genuine infectious excitement. Breathless yet exhilarated, Adelia dreams of overtaking him, while the uncle demands answers for this insanity. Did you teach her the mana heart? The youth shrugs, asking if there's an issue with him. The uncle explodes, calling the sacred art a trashy gimmick. The youth's face darkens with pure irritation. Get out. As he's kicked out, the uncle mourns the wasted potential of a better destiny. Claiming the youth ruined their future, the commander is escorted away by Carl on the prince's command. Rejecting any help, the old knight storms off, his solitary figure crossing the vast silent training field. Is it really just a trick? Adelia whispers. He looks her dead in the eye. Not even close. Confused by the count's scorn, he simply explains that the old man is blind to true power. He muses on how this era has lost the ancient secrets. If they only knew the truth, they threw it away like garbage, but he promises Adelia she'll soon see its godlike potential. Jagged mana lightning shreds the earth as he stands centered, radiating an aura of absolute calm authority. Returning despite his vow, the uncle demands a duel to settle the score once and for all. 1 mana ring is all I'll use. Move me an inch, and you win my respect. Tightening his grip, the youth recalls their high-stakes wager, ready to claim the ultimate prize. 1 wish for the winner. The uncle confirms victory means the boy gets whatever he desires. Even the family's forbidden arts are on the table, but the youth has bigger goals in mind. He accepts. With a roar that shakes the courtyard, he lunges, igniting a clash of pure iron. The uncle smirks at the lethal throat-aimed strike, noting the boy's swordplay is as toxic as ever. Steel screams against wood in a blurred frenzy as the youth pushes forward with lethal intent. The impact shatters their training swords into splinters, sending a broken blade spiraling toward the sky. He dives in for a point-blank strike, but the uncle parries effortlessly, mocking the boy's speed. Is that your limit? The youth grinds his teeth, finally feeling the weight of their power gap. Hurled backward, he skids across the dirt, recovering just as the uncle asks if he's already finished. Our protagonist scoffs, refusing to voice the truth. His uncle is an absolute beast. He realizes the old man is just baiting him, pushing for more mana only to crush him harder. At his current level, defeat is inevitable. But with a smirk, he tosses a curveball at his uncle. He asks if things feel off, then dives into a history lesson from 4 centuries back. He pictures ancient warriors, slaying dragons and giant kings, performing miracles through sheer will and raw power. But then a shortcut appeared, and the legendary knightly arts were tossed aside like yesterday's trash. Suddenly, everyone believed the mana chain was the ultimate meta, leaving the mana heart in the dust. What's your point? The uncle grunts. The youth retorts that the heart wasn't the problem, the users were. Hearts aren't all built the same. Then he drops a name. Ever heard of? The Martial Spirit Hymn. The uncle dismisses it instantly. Save the bedtime stories for later. We're in the middle of a fight. Predictable. He remembers his uncle calling mana heart techniques nothing but cheap mercenary tricks. He throws the insult back, but his uncle just tells him to pipe down and asks if he's gassed. No thanks. He locks in. For a knight, every step taken is a brick in the wall of achievement. His 100 victories aren't just stats, they're his soul. As the hymn's verses echo, the uncle's eyes go wide. Total shock. The system reveals the achievement, explaining that these feats are carved directly into the heart. This is the birth of a martial spirit hymn. A notification pings, a legendary power is awakening right now. Born from pure struggle, the system confirms a common rank hymn of sparring now flows through his blade. 6 months of hellish training finally pays off. He grins, ready to show the true peak of mana. Witness the real mana heart. The screen flashes martial spirit hymn, the song of battle. Massive blue aura explodes. Even so, the uncle scoffs, convinced that a mana heart can't touch a mana chain. He's dead wrong. The youth lunges cloaked in a raging inferno of azure spiritual energy. Boom steel meets steel in a violent explosion. But ring mana is toxic, sending a brutal backflow through him. He winces as the internal recoil tears at his organs. The uncle smirks, thinking he's still got this. He respects the kid's grit, but the youth knows the price. He endured 1,000 backflows for this moment. 100 duels and 1,000 internal injuries. This hymn was literally forged to slay ring knights. He didn't just survive those hits. He absorbed 1,000 shockwaves to perfect this very technique. Blue light blindingly erupts. Behold, he shouts, the crushing weight of the hymn of sparring. His sword elongates into a beam of pure sapphire death. Finally, the uncle stops playing around. He locks in. Their combined power detonates, sending a massive shockwave that levels the surrounding area. The uncle takes a direct hit. The youth doesn't let up, unleashing a relentless storm of blue strikes. He brings the hammer down with a savage overhead swing, eyes glowing. His uncle is actually on the ropes. The old man is stunned. His practiced sword starts splintering, so he fires back with a massive mana wave. The youth braces himself. Bloodied and bruised, he grips his hilt tighter, refusing to back down an inch. His aura flares higher. A shaken uncle can't believe it, but the youth just throws his own words back. The uncle's presence explodes. You're arrogant, kid. Not every mana heart is meant to be this strong. He charges, cracking the earth. A vertical pillar of light erupts as their blades collide in a titanic blast. The uncle is sent flying into a wall. He crawls out of the debris, eyes cold. Playtime's over. He admits the kid is tough. Through the dust, the youth realizes a common rank hymn just isn't enough. On one knee, but still defiant, he starts another deep dive into the lore from 4 centuries ago. Back then, the knights screwed up big time. We see a vision of ancient warriors hunting monsters into extinction. They killed every monster so thoroughly that nothing was left for the next generation to test their steel against. The legendary techniques were passed down at first, but without a real threat, those skills began to rot away. Forgotten and buried, tales of terrifying dragons and giant kings eventually turned into nothing more than real monsters became fairy tales. New hymns were still made, but they were forged against weak human-level obstacles. Modern hymns are just low-tier echoes. They're nothing but weak shadows compared to the glory of the original arts. Weapons that don't reach mythic levels can't contain this insane power. They'll just shatter under the pressure. Ian snaps, trashing the mana chain as weak. His opponent is totally lost, unable to follow his cryptic words. You drunk? The guy asks, baffled. Vale Balorhart's glare sharpens, labeling Ian a delusional and arrogant knight. Ian declares they're about to witness exactly what legendary power they've stupidly thrown away. A terrifying crimson aura explodes, morphing into a monstrous soul-crushing presence that fills the room. A massive demonic specter swallows Ian whole as the narrator warns ignorance carries a deadly price. I'll show you, he vows, red energy spiraling around his sword. The hymn's voice boasts absolute god-tier dominance. This power slices through anything, even dragon scales. Ian's eyes ignite with a predatory demonic red glow. And it drinks their blood. Ian finishes, chanting the lethal skill, Hymn of True Dragon Slaying. The system screams, a warning his stats are too low. Agonizing feedback ripples through his entire body. The hymn is stripped away, leaving Ian with only a tiny broken fragment of its true power. Even a mere sliver is enough to unleash a catastrophic slash that could rend a dragon's hide. With bloodshot eyes, Ian lunges. Vale counters his own aura, exploding in a desperate bid to survive. Their weapons clash violently. Vale freezes, sensing an alien overwhelming power gnawing at his aura. Panic sets in. Vale feels like he's being devoured, as their clashing energies condense into a blinding sphere. Boom! The training ground disintegrates in a massive blast. Ian is hurled back as frantic screams erupt. As the smoke dissipates, Vale is revealed still standing tall amidst the swirling debris and dust. Broken on the ground, Ian calculates his next move, grumbling that Vale totally cheated on their agreement. Vale is shaken. Even with all 4 aura rings active, he couldn't stop Ian from snapping his sword. Totally drained, Ian forces himself to sit up after the duel. Its basic logic, heart mana is supposedly weaker than aura rings. Or so the world thinks. Ian looks Count Vale dead in the eye and drops the truth bomb. You lost the match. A dark memory flashes a colossal dragon snarling before the beast is brutally shredded by a rain of blades. No, the narrator rejects the vision. A gleaming blade appears as a thunderous command echoes. Stop. Drenched in sweat, Ian begs for the nightmare to end, waking up gasping as flickering power stabs his chest. He collapses onto his bed, trembling violently, his knuckles white as he grips the sheets in agony. Cursing that damn him, he groans. Forcing out that level of power is literally wrecking his physical form. Splitting the dragon's scales has a steep price. Invoking a mythic being pushes him past his limits. The strain is insane, but even with a broken body, Ian knows this power-up was worth the risk. He activates his own creation, a hymn forged from 100 victories. His pride, his ultimate strength, countless duels and relentless attacks flash by, all condensed into this new glowing blue hymn of power. He'll face whatever comes next. As his sparring hymn levels up, he's finally ready for the prince. He ponders his next move until his maid's voice breaks through. The maid bursts in crying, tears of joy. Apparently his collapse sent the queen into a massive rage. Ian smirks, thinking they got what they deserved. But the maid has news. Count Ballerhart left a message. The count wants to know the second you're conscious, she reports, eyes wide with urgency. Not yet, Ian dismisses. He needs more time to recover before dealing with that stubborn old wolf. A jagged spike of pain shoots through him. His condition is still dangerously volatile. If he doesn't fix this spirit damage now, the overuse of that martial hymn will destroy him. His memories warn of a dark fate where the lines between past and present vanish into total madness. He'd be trapped in an endless loop of slaughter, a broken spirit wandering a shattered world for eternity. The thought of becoming a sword memory again makes him shudder. Then he recalls the legendary Agnes Byron. You're a Byron, Ian tells her. You have the blood to inherit the flaming hymn of your ancestor. She's completely floored. Her ancestor was a legendary swordswoman. It sounds like a total fairy tale. Ian warns her she needs massive gains before handling that power. Now time to handle his next problem. He corners her with a heavy question. What does she truly seek from the path of the sword? Trembling, she fumbles for an answer. She manages to whisper that reaching knighthood is only the beginning. Once she achieves that rank, she claims a greater purpose will unfold. Yet the words die in her throat. Seeing her struggle, Ian offers a graceful exit, telling her the answer can wait for now. He makes her promise to tell him eventually. As she retreats, Ian's gaze lingers, deeply intrigued by the secrets hidden in her heart. Summoning every ounce of courage, she suddenly proclaims she will become his living weapon, dedicating her entire life to his cause. This unexpected declaration catches Ian completely off guard. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as a legendary martial spirit hymn begins to resonate. While some hymns roar like war horns or thunderous charges across blood-soaked fields, this one starts with a single, resolute step forward. It is a melody born from a soul-binding oath. Adelia has chosen to cast aside her own life to become Ian's ultimate shadow. Brilliant golden flames erupt around her. A system alert echoes Adelia Byron has successfully offered the sacred hymn of subordination. Ian watches in awe as her martial spirit hymn manifests. Primal golden energy surges into his chest, sealing their eternal pact. These hymns possess the power to reshape souls, and through their intense connection, a brand new resonance has been birthed. To his shock, Ian realizes he has unlocked a normal-grade martial spirit hymn of his own, the Hymn of Domination. Unlike typical battle cries, the Hymn of Subordination is a mystical shackle that forever links the souls of master and servant. It transcends mere combat prowess. Even with her innate slave mentality, Adelia has forged something far more profound and terrifying. Ian is stunned that a noble descendant of the legendary Sword Marquis would choose such a path. He has gained an unbelievable ally. A smirk plays on his lips. He realizes that as the sole anchor of her devotion, her growth directly fuels his own power. Every step she takes toward greatness will inevitably elevate him, making her evolution a direct boost to his sovereign authority. He offers a sincere thanks for her loyalty. Blushing furiously, she can only stammer his name. Ian knows this is just the start. Though the full extent of this power remains a mystery, it is an undeniable asset. Days pass, and royal life eventually resumes. Clad in regal finery, Ian sits upon a massive throne, his body language radiating a subtle, sharp tension. With Adelia and a knight flanking him, the queen breaks the silence, checking if his health has fully returned. Addressing him as Adrian, the nickname only she uses, Ian confirms his recovery. Privately, his mind is racing with complex thoughts. Crushing enemies is second nature, but facing the overwhelming love meant for the body's original owner feels incredibly awkward. She gently probes if he still hates his Uncle Vale, insisting that the man never truly intended to cause him harm. She begs him to bury the hatchet. Ian claims he feels no bitterness, but she refuses to believe his calm exterior. She assumes he is masking his pain from Vale's harshness. Ian firmly repeats that he harbors zero resentment toward his uncle. Secretly, he knows the truth. He already shattered Vale's ego during their clash, planting a seed of doubt in his soul. That psychological trauma is an inner demon now devouring Vale. If he survives the mental torment, he might evolve. If not, he is finished. Ian remains cold and indifferent to the outcome. Whether Vale rises or falls is of no concern to the new king. The queen explains that Vale is simply a man who understands steel better than people, yet lately he seemed genuinely proud. She reveals that Vale actually petitioned the king himself to save Ian. Because of that interference, his punishment was cut short. However, Ian's immediate antics after being freed put Vale in a terrible spot. Ian begins to reevaluate the man's motives. He wonders why a hardened warrior like Vale would stick his neck out for him. Suddenly, the veteran scholar Niccolo Marchitella arrives. Niccolo offers a respectful greeting, but the atmosphere remains heavy. When he announces he is Ian's new tutor, the air freezes. Ian delivers a flat refusal, leaving the onlookers in total shock. They watch tensely, wondering how the old scholar will react. Ian throws a tantrum about studying, but Niccolo fires back, claiming a man without knowledge is no better than a wild animal. Offended, Ian asks if he's being called a beast. Niccolo smirks, noting that since Ian has not studied, the label might fit. Ian screams that he already possesses all the wisdom he needs. He insists that traditional lessons are a complete waste of time. Sensing an opportunity, Niccolo proposes a challenge. If Ian can prove his intellect in a debate, the lessons will end forever. They will simply discuss the world. If Ian's knowledge is truly superior, Niccolo promises to never darken his door again. Seeing an easy win, Ian agrees with a cocky grin. He slams his hand on the desk to seal the deal. Diving into the debate, Ian passionately argues that a true ruler must always be wary of betrayal from those beneath them. He claims kindness is a weakness others exploit. Intrigued, Niccolo pulls out a specific text that matches Ian's dark philosophy. It is the theory of the iron-blooded monarch. As Ian begins to read, Niccolo explains the core of the controversial book. The text defines the bond between a ruler and their subjects as a cold transactional contract of protection for absolute loyalty. Ian buys it. To him, every bond is just a cold game of equivalent exchange. Deep into the night, they tear through ancient texts until Niccolo finally snaps his heavy tomes shut. Class dismissed. Niccolo promises a sequel tomorrow, and surprisingly, Ian is actually hooked on the lessons. Ian nods instantly. But once Niccolo vanishes, he freezes. Wait, did I just actually enjoy studying? It hits him like a truck. How did he fall for the productive student trap so easily? A smirk creeps up. That old man is dangerously sly. Meanwhile, Niccolo retreats into his own deep thoughts. The first prince is nothing like the trashy rumors. Pacing the halls, Niccolo's gears start turning again. Ian's reality shatters every lie. Later, the prince hangs upside down off his bed, rotting from sheer boredom. He whines to his knight about the agonizing silence, thrashing around his bed like a restless child. Maybe being a good boy after his recovery was a mistake. Without training, he's absolutely losing it. A servant breaks the silence. Sir Vale Ballarhard has arrived. Finally, some entertainment for the bored prince. Adelia hesitates, but Ian snaps. Send him in. He quickly fixes his robes, playing the part. It's been days since their clash about time for a visit. But Vale's face tells a darker story. Ian spots it instantly. His uncle is still haunted. Those inner demons are clearly winning the war inside. Heavy silence fills the room. Vale chokes out an apology, admitting he failed his word and lost control. He nearly killed Ian. But Ian knows the truth. It was his own forbidden hymn that wrecked his body. The dragon-slaying arts took the toll, not Vale's steel. He remembers the queen's warning about Vale's shaky status. Vale bows low, begging for a way to atone. He's ready to sacrifice an arm for forgiveness. An eye, a limb. Ian just scoffs. Maiming his own uncle wouldn't benefit him in the slightest. It's tragic. A potential swordmaster reduced to a shell of a man paralyzed by his own guilt. Feeling generous, Ian offers a deal. Forgiveness is on the table, but it'll cost a specific price. I have one wish, Ian declares. He locks eyes with Vale and demands a real taste of freedom. Vale counters that his house arrest is over, but Ian clarifies he's not talking about a stroll. He's leaving. He's ditching the capital for a long-haul journey. Vale goes silent, calculating the massive logistical nightmare of scheduling. Plus, the royal banquet is coming. Ian shrugs. That's fine as long as he gets out of here. Vale promises to send word once the plans are locked. Ian dismisses him with a sharp nod. His knight companion stares in stunned silence. Ian catches the look and raises a judgmental eyebrow. Why? The face Ian demands. The knight admits the prince's request was surprisingly reasonable for once. He expected a chaotic demand. But Ian explains that holding this debt over the count is pure leverage. A broken promise is a powerful weapon. The knight sighs, seeing the stubborn old count finally brought low. Carl starts laughing, but Ian scolds him for getting way too comfortable lately. Ian plays the regal role perfectly. Suddenly, a maid brings news the secret letter has finally arrived. He breaks the seal and magical energy explodes into a projection of a woman wreathed in blue flames. She's reached a major milestone and promises a visit soon. Her power hums through the very air. Stay healthy, she says. Ian grins. This news couldn't have come at a more perfect moment. 5 days pass before the reply hits. 2 days later, it's go time. The journey finally begins. Carriages roll out under heavy night escort. Mid-trip, Ian leans out and shouts a question to his uncle. "Where are we headed again?" Ian asks. His uncle grumbles, annoyed that the prince can't sit still. In a funny chibi moment, Vale barks at Ian to get back inside and wait for the explanation. Welcome to Ellen County, the crown's massive forge. With endless iron mines, it's the heartbeat of royal weaponry. Master smiths refine every ounce here. Over half of the royal arsenal is born from these very fires. Ian's eyes light up. With his cultivation surging, he finally needs a legendary sword of his own. No more borrowed blades. He remembers the royal ban, a decree strictly forbidding him from carrying a sword. The palace won't give him a toothpick. Looking back at his trash era, he can't really blame them. If the palace says no, he'll find his own steel elsewhere. Ian sinks into deep thought as they roll. Gazing at his uncle, the prince realizes the man's cold exterior hides a surprisingly thoughtful soul. Their 20-day trek kicks off with a clash as the uncle shuts the window, sparking the prince's immediate annoyance. The route is set a 3-day ride to Ellen County, before a 2-day sprint to Iron Lion Castle. They will catch their breath at Iron Lion Castle before making the final trek back to the capital. Trapped inside the rolling box, the prince fumes at being forced to stay still for 72 hours straight. In a tiny chibi huff, he grumbles that his silent maid makes this ride a total snooze fest. Shifting focus, he dives into his mana heart, recalling how the hymn of true dragon slaying drained him. His core is bone dry. He immediately begins cultivating, determined to overflow his hollow mana heart once again. He syncs his breathing with the carriage's rhythmic rattling, turning every bump into a catalyst for his concentration. He weaves the cool breeze passing through the window into his intense meditation. Even the night's distant chatter fuels him as he draws in scattered motes of raw magical energy. He funnels the energy into his core until a massive vortex of sapphire light erupts within him. Pure shock hits as he realizes his mana heart has expanded exponentially. Suddenly, the system pings with answers. Pushing past his limits with the hymn allowed him to touch a massive divine will, supersizing his core. Alerts flash announcing a total physical evolution and a massive upgrade to his mana capacity. His body's stats have peaked, allowing him to channel devastating amounts of mana without breaking a sweat. He is officially a sword expert. Plus, his connection to the origin has just leveled up. Sealed powers are cracking open with his third eye and third ear senses reaching god-tier levels of clarity. Waking from his trance, he spots his maid hovering nervously nearby in an adorable chibi panic. With a satisfied stretch, he celebrates his massive power creep, one step closer to absolute dominance. The scene shifts to the majestic Ellen County estate, where the prince receives a high-tier royal welcome. Lord Edgar and his heir, Torrance, step forward to pay their respects to the young royal. After the prince accepts their welcome, Torrance offers to lead him to his quarters for some much-needed rest. Later, the prince scouts the mansion, his eyes scanning the massive collection of weapons lining the walls. The place is packed with gear, but most of it looks like flashy junk purely for show zero utility. Strolling through the armory, he realizes finding a blade worthy of his hands here is highly unlikely. The prince turns to Torrance, asking for confirmation that the Blacksmith Guild operates within these lands. Torrance nods, and the prince immediately orders a detour to the guild to see the masters at work. As they walk, Torrance warns him that smiths are a stubborn, gritty bunch who hate being interrupted. They might ignore a lord's presence entirely. Torrance begs the prince not to take their coldness personally. It is just craftsman pride, he claims, right as the roar of a massive forge hits their ears. With the furnace blaring, Torrance yells over the heat, telling the prince to shout if it is too much. The deafening clang of iron on iron washes over the prince, filling his mind with rhythmic violence. Torrance notices the prince dazing out and calls his name amidst the chaos of roaring fire. Ignoring the hissing bellows and sweltering heat, the prince ventures deeper into the heart of the forge. Smiths swing heavy hammers with brute force through the thick, smoky air. Suddenly, a single crystal-clear strike cuts through the noise, instantly grabbing the prince's attention. He spots an old, shirtless veteran by the furnace, relentlessly pummeling a piece of white-hot steel. The man's laser focus triggers something deep inside the prince, a resonance with his very first memory. Visions of a golden blade and a sapphire gem flash by. He stares, sweat dripping down his chin. A cloth suddenly dabs his brow. His maid frets over his intense sweating, gently wiping his face. He mumbles back, still in a daze, while the other smiths begin to cluster around the party. While the old man stays locked in his rhythm, the guild leader Zaxxon makes his appearance. Zaxxon and his crew drop to one knee, offering a formal salute as Torrance introduces the master. Zaxxon barks at the old man for not bowing, but the prince suddenly slams his foot onto the anvil. Zaxxon barks at the old smith, demanding he drop his tools and bow before the royal prince. Fed up, the prince muzzles Zaxxon's face to silence his annoying chatter. His gaze sharpens as he locks onto the forge. Nearby, the young apprentice stands frozen, paralyzed by the mounting tension. On the anvil, the white-hot metal begins to dim. The prince realizes these men were forced to stop just for him. He warns the workers that the iron is chilling, and if they don't move, the furnace will go cold. His command snaps them out of their daze. Instantly, the workshop erupts into chaotic life. They scramble to the bellows while the prince crosses his arms, settling in to watch the master work. He stands like a statue, mesmerized by every strike of the hammer. The veteran smith never stops shaping the steel. Sweat pours down his face as a rhythmic symphony of iron on iron echoes through the forge. Bathed in a crimson glow, the prince watches the smith's silhouette dance amidst a storm of golden sparks. The inferno reflects in his wide eyes, showing how deeply the craftsmanship has captivated his soul. He stands motionless, hypnotized by the steady heartbeat of the hammer. Each heavy blow sends fire flying. Everything else fades away as the prince views the scene through a tunnel of pure, fiery focus. Drenched in sweat, he feels a strange new fire stirring inside him. Later, Torrance shares a puzzling secret. For 6 months, the master has forged legendary blades, only to immediately melt them back into liquid scrap. Were they failures? The prince asks. Torrance can't say but notes that every weapon should have been a masterpiece. The smith is a living legend, and even the ruined blades looked absolutely perfect to Torrance's eyes. He simply can't fathom why they were destroyed. For weeks, the old man hasn't slept or eaten, only worked. Given the smith's age, the family is terrified his body will give out before the sword is done. The prince wonders what it truly means to be a master of one's craft. Days blur together. Every morning the prince arrives, staying until the stars appear just to witness the struggle. The smith remains obsessed, ignoring the world. The prince watches in total silence, never once breaking the master's flow. Despite the high-stakes visit, the forge remains peaceful. No drama, just the relentless grind of a genius. Night falls over the mansion, bathed in moonlight. Finally, the day of the prince's departure arrives. He stands by the forge one last time, listening to the heavy hammer blows with a heavy heart. The master continues his assault on the glowing steel with unwavering, fierce determination. I hoped to see it finished, the prince sighs. Behind him, Torrance remains silent, sharing that same regret. The prince is crushed by disappointment. Suddenly, his uncle arrives to prepare for the final banquet. They must leave at dawn. Torrance senses the prince's lingering desire to see the master's true work. He wished more than anything the prince could witness the birth of a completed masterpiece, if only for a second. Just as the prince steps toward his carriage, a desperate shout echoes through the courtyard. Torrance sprints toward them, screaming that the blade is finally done. The prince's eyes go wide with shock. They race back to the forge. At the break of dawn, the old man stands tall with a new sword. Under the rising sun, he polishes the metal until it gleams with a blinding ethereal light. Kneeling, the smith offers the weapon. The prince sees his own reflection dancing on the pristine, legendary steel. "This is for you," the smith declares. The surrounding nobles gasp, stunned by the weight of the moment. The prince remembers an old smith song about steel forged in sunrise and quenched in the blood of kings. A process that births a sword fit for a true ruler. A weapon that embodies the kingly sun itself. Lifting the blade, the prince admires the intricate guard and asks the old man if the weapon has a name. "Twilight," the exhausted smith whispers. Is it dawn or dusk? For him, dusk, but for the prince, it's dawn. The prince chuckles, surprised by the old master's hidden poetic soul. Tears well in the smith's eyes as a massive weight finally lifts. He collapses, his mission finally complete. The prince catches him instantly. The old man is spent having poured his entire life force into the steel. "Tell my uncle I'm staying," the prince commands. "I won't leave him like this tonight." Outside, royal knights keep watch under the stars. Inside, the prince stays by the master's side all night. Under the fading twilight, the old man whispers a secret. The moment the prince stood behind him, the blade finally took its true form. It was destiny's hand. He believes the sword chose its own birthday, guided by an invisible force. The prince questions this belief with a subtle smirk. He knows the truth is far more profound than mere luck. Leaning over the master smith, he prepares to drop a bombshell. The old man's heart nearly stops from the shock. As the smith glimpses the young man's true essence, the prince confirms his identity. He explains that a soul-bound weapon deeply resonates with its creator. Gasping for air on his deathbed, the master smiles. He finally sees the big picture. With a shaky voice, he asks to hold the blade once more. The prince obliges, and the master's trembling fingers grip the hilt. Clutching the weapon, he makes one last dying wish. He prays that this blade grows to be as legendary as the prince himself. The prince stays silent, sharing the weight of the sword with the fading master. A solemn vow is made. Looking at the now silent master, the prince remains by his side in the quiet room. Clutching the master's final masterpiece, the prince watches him pass peacefully. Night blankets the royal camp in heavy silence. Under the watch of sentries, a noble presents a gorgeous, ornate case. He begins his smooth-talking pitch. He claims the soul sword is too precious for daily use, offering a flashy alternative weapon instead. He unveils a magic sword, hoping to trade up. The prince scans the blade instantly, tagging it as a mid-tier toy. It is just average. He notes that the master's gift is already incredible enough on its own. Adding a magic sword feels like overkill. The noble nervously babbles about his family's undying loyalty to the crown. Inside, he's screaming. His plan to snag the master's work for a flashy prop just blew up in his face. It was a total loss. Meanwhile, the army mobilizes, leaving the heavy carriages to trail behind the main force. The cavalry surges ahead at full throttle. The prince joins the march, catching the commander's curious eye. The commander realizes the prince was MIA during their stay busy with a classified mission from the king himself. The prince knows this detour had its costs. The commander warns him to buckle up for a brutal ride. They need to hit Iron Lion Castle by sundown. The problem: the prince has zero clue how to ride a horse. The commander is floored. The prince internally justifies it. He was a literal sword, so why would he need a saddle? He never had a reason to learn. Now, on the road, the prince is absolutely struggling with the rhythm. Adelia watches him with pure concern, as he nearly gets bucked off his mount multiple times. It's a chaotic mess of near falls and stubborn horses before they finally get back on track. By the time they arrive, the prince is completely fried. It took double the time, but they finally reach the gates. The prince looks up at the towering walls. They have finally arrived at the legendary Iron Lion Castle. The castle gates swing open as House Walden's finest knights march out to greet their royal guest. They officially welcome the first prince of Liamberg. But the prince senses a weirdly intense energy from the crowd. Their fighting spirit is turned up to 11. He realizes there is a very specific reason for this tension. His eyes lock onto Arwen, a stern female knight. She is the eye of this storm. Time to stir the pot. He summons her forward. Arwen kneels instantly, confessing she's been counting the seconds until their reunion. The announcement sends a wave of pure jealousy through the ranks. The prince watches the knights' faces turn red. Behind him, Adelia's aura turns cold and lethal. She's not vibing with Arwen's bold confession at all. Noticing the rising bloodlust, the prince quickly calls Adelia's name. She snaps out of her trance instantly. Her murderous intent vanishes into confusion. She bows submissively, making the prince glad he already broke her spirit. Smirking, he decides to double down. He orders Arwen to lead the way, feeling the burning glares of the knights. He teases that they have catching up to do, inviting the rest of her squad to join the fun as well. Now dressed for combat and holding a training sword, the prince stands in the center of the yard. Facing the Iron Lion apprentices, he announces he wants to witness their legendary skills firsthand. The crowd goes silent. The apprentices, trade nervous, looks too scared to make the first move. The prince's patience wears thin. He promises zero consequences for anyone brave enough to step up. He swears on the Liamberg name that no one will be punished for the outcome of the duel. Still, the silence is deafening. He asks one last time, is there really no one with the guts to fight? A fiery-haired recruit mocks the Iron Lions as cowards, sneering that their legendary status is nothing but a total facade. Stepping forward, the youth identifies as Dale of House Denant, feigning humility while claiming he's barely fit to represent them. He begs for the chance to cross blades, vowing to stand tall against the prince in the coming duel. The prince shrugs, welcoming any challenger who dares step up. Without warning, Dale lunges forward with reckless, desperate intent. He swings his wooden sword, barking a warning. Meanwhile, the prince remains dead, calm, preparing his devastating, effortless counter. Boom, a surge of raw sword energy blasts Dale back. The boy coughs up blood, his face twisted in disbelief. Dale is sent tumbling across the dirt while the prince stands immovable, his chest radiating a piercing blue celestial glow. Next, the prince calls out coldly. The remaining recruits freeze their eyes wide with terror as they watch their fallen comrade. Sensing the pressure, a veteran named Paul Rothaim steps out, feeling forced to defend their honor due to his seniority. One strike is all it takes to send him crashing. One by one, more desperate students step forward to meet fate. They are systematically crushed even as they scream their legacy is invincible. The prince just looks utterly and completely bored. The courtyard erupts into chaos as shockwaves from his strikes send dust and debris flying in every single direction. In minutes, the training ground is a graveyard of defeated souls, with only the prince standing tall amidst the carnage. He exhales a weary sigh, muttering that this was child's play. Now, he's hungry for a real challenge against elite knights. He scolds the professionals for their sluggishness. Arwen flinches when her name is called, looking completely caught off guard. He orders her to join his side, and she instantly complies. Deeply moved, Arwen bows low, swearing her eternal loyalty. The watching knights are left speechless. Later that night, a mysterious armored figure approaches the prince with a dark tone. While the prince finds his foes lacking, this cloaked knight notes his reputation for loving a high-stakes, dangerous gamble. He suggests a little wager to spice things up, beginning to list his demands should he somehow topple the prince. The prince shuts him down instantly. He refuses to let Arwen be a trophy, declaring she is not a bargaining chip. He counters with a different prize and signals Carl to fetch his blade. Gripping the ornate hilt, he sets the stage. If the knight triumphs, he earns this masterwork weapon. Arwen's heart stops at the sheer weight of such a bet. Even the challenger is stunned by the offer. Arwen frantically protests, arguing the prince's safety is worth more than steel. He silences her, stating a sword, master's soul cannot be compared to mere metal. She falls silent, absorbing his words. Contemplating the true weight of a master, the knight grins, introducing himself as Dunham Fahrenheit, ready for the kill. This elite Iron Lion is nearly at the prestigious triple chain rank. The prince just offers a mocking, playful smirk. So you're just a double chain then, he taunts. Irritated Dunham unsheathes his own prized legendary blade in a fury. He boasts it's the 17th masterpiece of a world-renowned smith. If the prince falls, that sword belongs to him. The prince smiles at the coincidence, drawing his own divine blade that perfectly mirrors the craftsmanship of Dunham's weapon. He reveals their swords share the same creator, transforming this duel into an epic clash between two legendary masterpieces. The prince declares his blade is the smith's 100th work. Dunham's jaw drops. He's never heard of such a mythical weapon. He explains it's the master's final hidden magnum opus. Realizing the stakes, Dunham braces himself for the fight of his life. A lightning-fast aura erupts around Dunham. He admits he respects the prince's earnest, though misguided path toward power. He pledges to strike with everything he has. Across from him, the prince is enveloped in a terrifying storm of energy. Misguided path, Riley scoffs. He begins channeling a torrential flow of blue flame-like mana directly from his core. He views Dunham's status with indifference, feeling that empty titles and royal labels were never meant for someone like him. Adelia watches breathless. She feels the profound respect the prince holds for his people. Arwen and Carl watch with tension. As blue aura swirls like a hurricane, the prince decides that only the respect of his true people actually matters. He commands Adelia to watch closely as he carves the path she must follow. Trembling with resolve, she acknowledges his word. Suddenly, a massive dragon-shaped torrent of blue sword intent explodes outward, revealing the true god-tier strength of his style. He proclaims this as her new reality. Inspired, Adelia tightens her grip, her heart igniting as she accepts his order. Standing behind her, Arwen watches as Adelia's golden power flares up, perfectly harmonizing with the prince's overwhelming blue pressure. She swears to follow that destiny, addressing him as her highness. Meanwhile, faraway, restless nobles whisper about recent rumors. A lord asks how many times they've scouted the Iron Lion Castle. The reply comes, it is their 4th official visit. The commander falls into thought. It's clear the 4th, 3rd, and 5th princes have zero interest in taking the throne. He'd scouted the 1st prince's probation, noting the 2nd's brief appearance. The commander broods over the past. Though the 1st prince was a mess, he was the rightful heir. Lord Walden erupts, blaming the commander. This crisis is on you. Had the 3rd Legion's Titan lent even a shred of support, things would differ. The prince wouldn't have been cast into total isolation. The commander's silence masks a heavy, bitter truth. He'd truly forsaken his own blood, the previous heir. Back then, the boy was just a useless, alcoholic tyrant, unfit for any throne. He flashes back to the day he scolded that royal wreck. The boy was fueled by dark concoctions, eyes burning with malice. He actually lunged at his own uncle. Blade drawn, the brat was a hopeless villain. But that wasn't the end of the betrayal. After retreating north in disgust, a gift arrived, a bottle of wine laced with lethal poison. He stared at the treachery within. Coldly, he downed the glass using raw mana to incinerate the venom. As the poison died, so did his last spark of love. His nephew was dead to him, but today that scoundrel is unrecognizable. He's witnessed the prince grinding through hellish, relentless training sessions. The boy's power surges daily. Lord Walden snaps back, reminding him of his never-a-king vow. He's a different man, the commander barks. He pleads for the boy to have one simple thing, a fair shot at the throne. He bows low, begging with an intensity that leaves Walden rattled. Walden is lost for words. The commander just sighs, he's not sure who's transformed more, himself or the prince. Suddenly, a knight slams through the doors, shouting for Walden. Panic drips from the messenger's frantic voice. The 1st prince. Something happened. As they race back, they pray Dunham didn't overstep his bounds. Surely nothing's broken. Even in a deathmatch, Dunham wouldn't dare cripple a royal heir. The commander smirks. Don't worry about the prince. Worry about your knight. Walden freezes, confused. Walden is rattled. They arrive only to find Dunham literally cratered into the dirt, totally defeated. Nobles gasp in horror, screaming Dunham's name, while the other trainees stare in total awe. The prince just casually dusted him. Another Win instructors gape as their worldview shatters in real time. I told you he was a monster, one mutters. Meanwhile, the prince centers, his breathing eyes sharp. Blue aura explodes, wiping blood from his lip. He smirks from within the sapphire flames. Dunham was just the warm-up, he sneers. Next, he remembers his uncle's lecture on true knightly power. Real combat starts at 2 rings. The prince funnels his blue mana, prepping for a genuine collision. Uncle wasn't kidding. A 2-ring knight strike thunders down heavy enough to crush bone. His current style is too soft. But he won't unleash dragon slaying on a mere mortal knight. Switching tactics, he triggers hyper-focus. Time slows to a crawl as the knight lunges. Pure concentration coils in his chest. Blue mana vibrates, ready to explode in a counter. Silence falls. The knight swings with everything. Suddenly, the prince's body reacts on pure instinct. He enters the zone. His eyes ignite with azure fire as the combat trance takes total control. A familiar chill, the feeling of facing a god. He raises his steel to meet the oncoming storm. Steel meets steel. A colossal sapphire explosion rips across the grounds, blinding every onlooker. The knights blasted away. Students gape in horror. The prince gulps down air. He lowers his sword, then barks out next. The knights freeze. This monster isn't even done yet. He intercepts the next charge. Swords scream as they collide. He looks his foe in the eye. Victory after victory. He blurs toward another victim who braces for the inevitable impact. A heavy overhead smash. They trade savage blows in a lethal high-speed dance of steel. One blue / another, body flies. He's clearing the field like a god of war. Zero mercy. He drives them back with blazing strikes. His gaze is cold, sharp, and terrifyingly clear. His blade hums with power. Finally, the tip touches the soil. The slaughter is finally over. Twilight falls. He stands solitary amidst a sea of defeated knights, his blue aura flickering. Lung-burnt and shaking, he grips his hilt. Then the silence breaks, the trainees erupt in wild cheers. Even Piton is crushed, officially marking the prince's savage streak of 5 consecutive victories. He recites ancient verses about surviving endless wars, causing a refreshing system notification to appear. His spar hymn grows stronger as he vows to ascend further with his trusty blade. The system announces that his hymn has reached an extraordinary grade and is now upgrading. Blue energy surges around him as the skill transforms into the intense hymn of dueling. He successfully evolved his power, but his drained body finally gives out and he collapses. A knight rushes to his side, offering praise for the prince's absolutely legendary battlefield victory. Every knight present takes a knee, loudly hailing the sword and spirit of the first prince. He's shook. The guys who once wanted to end him are now acting like total fanboys. Watching nobles laugh that soldiers are simple-minded and obsessed with anyone holding a sword. Knights only live for the thrill of battle, ignoring the prince's obvious worry about their hatred. A noble lectures that a fair loss holds more than any rigged or dirty win. They joke that only Dunham is sulking, forced to hand over the sword he loved bragging about. Crushing Dunham's ego was a total win, even if his ancient mana heart remains gone. He realizes one thing: these knights still worship strength and respect a gracious defeat. Time flies by as the prince prepares to leave the fortress behind forever. With a formal send-off, he bids them farewell, promising to meet again on the battlefield. Just as he approaches his carriage, he pulls Count Walden aside for a quick word. He tells Walden to keep every detail of his stay a strictly guarded secret. Walden is confused, but the prince's sharp smirk reveals he's already plotting something big. Somewhere nearby, a mysterious man in a red uniform ominously plans to toy with the prince. The royal escort makes camp as the commander heads out to scout the dark surroundings. Arwen, the dark-haired knight, watches the prince with silent and heavy suspicion. He notices her unease, but figures she'll eventually get used to his chaotic new self. Yawning at his tent entrance, he finally decides it's time to get some rest. His maid welcomes him back, and he muses that an S-rank genius is still acting domestic. She asks if he's upset, but he just collapses onto the bed in total exhaustion. He waves her away, reflecting on how different the Iron Lion Knights actually were. Using his judgment power, he saw that most of them possess only mediocre sword talent. In his past, they'd be nobodies, yet now, these ordinary men reach expert levels quickly. While legendary heroes have declined, the power level of the average soldier has risen. He realizes this strange power shift is all thanks to the mana chain system. His uncle was once strong enough for transcendence, before he suddenly abandoned that path. It's nearly impossible to achieve anything beyond the extraordinary grade in this current era. He blames the flow of time, and vows to learn this era from the ground up. A familiar voice praises his resolve, catching the prince completely off guard. His uncle enters, claiming it's never too late to chase after his secret dreams. He points out that the prince won over the Iron Lions like no other sibling could. The praise feels wrong, leaving the prince mentally screaming in utter confusion and disbelief. He yells back, asking if his uncle has lost his mind and forgotten their wager. The uncle clarifies that defeating a double-chain knight means the prince has basically won. "I'm here to fulfill my promise," the uncle declares, leaving the prince stunned. The prince assumes the wager was about crushing the third prince, but his uncle drops a bombshell that wasn't the deal. The real goal: slaying a double-chain knight. Since that's finished, victory is already secured. Stepping up, his uncle vows to finally honor his oath. The prince just stands there, his mind still trying to compute. With absolute gravity, the uncle reveals his titles, Count and Legion Commander. He then publicly declares his full support for Adrian. Adrian freezes in pure horror. He knows this declaration is a death sentence in the high-stakes Game of Thrones. Remembering his uncle's plea for trust, Adrian screams internally. He never once asked to wear that heavy crown. The announcement hits the kingdom like a nuclear blast. Back at court, everyone is suddenly the prince's best friend. Elite knights and soldiers storm in, followed by a sea of servants. The palace has turned into a chaotic circus. Adrian feels trapped as the spotlight burns brighter. Suddenly, he has become the center of the entire universe. "Get out," he snaps, demanding they leave. But the commander stands firm. They serve him now by royal decree. Adrian is losing it. Their constant presence is enough to drive any sane man straight over the edge. Finally, silence falls. The curtains sway in the breeze as the maddening noise of the crowd finally dies down. He sighs in relief, enjoying the peace until the third prince kicks the door down, screaming his name. Now, what? Adrian groans. Julian storms in his eyes, burning with the sting of pure, unadulterated betrayal. Julian accuses him of playing the fool, while secretly training with the Count to seize absolute power. Adrian just scoffs, training ambition. The sheer absurdity of the accusation is almost laughable at this point. Julian vows to destroy him for this deception. Adrian just clutches his head, everyone is forcing him toward the throne. Exhausted by this political tug-of-war, he decides it's time to hunt down the man who started this mess. Facing his uncle, Adrian doesn't hold back. Withdraw this later, he demands. I have zero interest in that throne. He is furious about being blindsided. Is protecting the Balorhard name really worth this massive royal headache? See, Balorhard is the kingdom's shield, the only thing standing between humanity and the relentless monster hordes. The uncle counters that their safety depends on the crown. As long as winter looms, the family is essential. Adrian sighs. He knew this storm was coming eventually, but that doesn't make the turmoil any less annoying. The uncle's warning is chilling. A firstborn who fails to claim the throne usually meets a very grim end. I'll give you time to wake up, the uncle says, but don't forget the harsh reality of your bloodline. He drops a truth bomb. Your claim to the crown only disappears once you stop breathing. Alone, Adrian grits his teeth. No amount of time will change his mind. He will never be their king. His goal isn't a dusty throne. He wants to reclaim his transcendent authority and his true godlike power. Compared to the legendary strength he once held, this succession battle is nothing but a trivial, petty joke. He stayed firm in that belief, right until the massive doors of the royal banquet hall swung wide open. The herald's voice booms, announcing the arrival of the legitimate heir, First Prince, Adrian Leonberg. Every eye in the hall locks onto him. Nobles and schemers alike hold their breath, watching his every move. Amidst the sea of faces, a mysterious woman in purple watches with a grin that screams pure danger. Decked out in his full-dress uniform, Adrian steps onto the podium. The Feast of Shadows officially begins. He descends the stairs with cold, calculated grace. The nobles can't look away from his new, imposing aura. They whisper that he's the spitting image of the young king. Adrian just rolls his eyes at their overreaction. All this for a little weight loss, he wonders. Are these shallow, frivolous people really the kingdom's elite? He activates judgment. Instantly, the room is flooded with the trait, Heart of a Serpent. What a joke. It's the mark of those who trample others to reach the top. Disgustingly, nearly every... Adrian zeroes in on Taylor. Amidst a sea of snakes, Taylor's raw honesty is a rare gem. Adrian playfully teases Taylor for being a stranger. Taylor bows low, honoring the prince's invitation. Skilled or not, untainted souls are gold. Adrian marks these straightforward men as the kingdom's new foundation. He'll mold Taylor into a vessel for the future. Suddenly, a knight's roar shatters the palace chatter. Silence falls. The herald bellows, Marquis Montpellier, ambassador of the Burgundy Empire, has arrived. Adrian's blood runs cold. Shock grips him as the ambassador enters, flanked by guards in crimson plumes. Every head bows. The narration introduces the portly, smiling viper, Colignon de Burgundy, Montpellier. Colignon greets him with a mock-polite smile. But Adrian's eyes burn with a 400-year-old hatred. Burgundy, the eternal enemy, the very nation Adrian bled to stop in his past life. He spent decades battling this nemesis. Now, seeing them walk freely in his home stokes a lethal rage. His killing intent flares like a storm. Suddenly, a noble accidentally stumbles, drenching the prince in wine. Dripping and disgraced, Adrian suppresses the urge to kill. The noble fakes a gasp, feigning deep concern. The man offers a hollow apology, hiding a smirk. Adrian's cold gaze pierces right through the pathetic facade. Across the room, Colignon watches with a sharp, calculating look, trying to decode the prince's bizarre reaction. Adrian stands at the center, a stained figure amidst the tense silence of 100 watching eyes. I need a change of clothes, he mutters. The old noble grovels, but Adrian is already moving. A knight in blazing lion-crested armor steps forward. It's Marquis Bielefeld, a name that still commands respect. Walking out, Adrian realizes not all nobles are rotten. The interruption was a blessing. His killing intent has subsided. Alone in his chambers, Adrian trembles, the weight of the past crashing down. A scarred man enters his uncle. Trouble follows you, he notes. Marquis Bielefeld reported that the prince looked ready to commit a massacre. Adrian doesn't deny it. If not for the wine, that hall would have turned into a graveyard. Why risk everything, his uncle asks. Adrian can't believe how low the kingdom has fallen under Burgundy's shadow. The corrupt Burgundy house holds the leash. Even Leonberg's nobles bow deeper to them than their own king. It's a pathetic, one-sided peace. The kingdom is little more than a vassal state, broken and humiliated. How did we become this weak? Adrian demands. His uncle sighs, a story as old as time. Once legendary knights repelled every invasion. They were a wall the empire could never hope to breach. But the gap widened. The empire became a juggernaut, and the small kingdom was forced to kneel. Adrian realizes the truth. The fall wasn't accidental, it's tied to the disappearance of a legendary power. A map reveals the David versus Goliath reality. Yet Leonberg once held a hidden trump card. History remembers the feats, heroic deeds that transformed mortal men into legends of the battlefield. These myths weren't just stories. They were fueled by a mysterious divine power that changed the world's fate. Martial hymns, the lost power. As Adrian laments the loss, a brilliant blue energy ignites in his chest. His eyes burn with new purpose. "I've changed my mind," he tells his stunned uncle. "I'm going to show them what a real king looks like." The resolve in his voice is terrifying. Regret may come, but duty calls. The second day of the banquet begins at the Grand Palace. Clad in his regal red uniform, Adrian prepares for war. The herald's voice echoes through the hall. First, Prince Adrian Leonberg and Lord Vale of Balorhart. Adrian enters, his gaze sharp enough to draw blood. He scans the room with cold, calculating eyes. The nobles whisper, their voices trembling as he passes. Their greetings are a joke, lacking the respect even a commoner deserves. Adrian hides his disgust behind a mask. He feels the crushing weight of the crown and the rot that has poisoned his kingdom's heart. To save the future, he must bury the past. The ghosts of his enemies are finally calling. His heart turns to steel. The Empire is about to learn that the Lion of Leonberg has awakened. He remembers his old friend, a peasant boy who picked up a sword and defied every expectation. That boy wasn't a saint or a genius. He was just a man who refused to stop moving. Just a swordsman with rough boots and a dream. Now Adrian stands exactly where he did. Standing before nobles draped in azure fire, the prince channels a boy's first leap into true leadership. Wrapped in that radiant aura, he commands the attention of those who once dared to look away. Blue mana spirals through the hall, paralyzing the court. He finally invokes the legendary Hymn of the King. Though his mana is drained, the system notes that most of the ancient hymn remains unspoken. He barely utters a quarter verse, enduring a strain that pales compared to a dragon-slaying melody. Recognizing the hero rank risk, his eyes flare. Despite the agony, no other song fits this moment. A glowing cloak of energy surges past the stunned crowd, leaving the aristocrats completely shell-shocked. As light floods the chamber, the nobles instinctively drop to their knees, crushed by his sovereign majesty. Satisfied with the flex, he smiles and signals them to rise. Suddenly, a sinister chill creeps in. An ominous purple haze swirls around a hooded figure. She reveals herself an elf. The prince is stunned. The elf muses that someone still knows the hymns. Instantly, the prince senses she is no ordinary being. She glides forward with lethal grace. Recognizing her identity, a wave of pure dread washes over him. Internally, he is panicking. Why is this monster here? Forget the fairy tales of gentle forest-dwelling beauties. People imagine elves as peaceful, life-cherishing immortals, living in harmony with the great green woods. That romanticized image is a total lie. The truth is shattered as a hand ruthlessly crushes a bird. Elves are cold-blooded predators, using beauty to mask their cruelty. High elves are the most lethal. The prince's blood runs cold. The woman before him is far beyond a standard high elf. She is Sigrun, an elder high elf, and a 1,000-year-old dancing magic swordswoman. She is a veteran of the expedition that slew the mad dragon 400 years ago. This deranged elf once tried to recruit him, promising a life of endless, chaotic excitement. She is the same psycho who obsessed over him during his past life as a literal sword. He prays she won't recognize him despite just chanting the king's hymn she knows so well. Sigrun narrows her eyes, claiming he feels strangely familiar. She asks if they have met before. He lies through his teeth, claiming he has never seen an elf. She studies him with suspicion. "Liar," she whispers. The prince recalls her overwhelming power from 400 years ago. After 4 centuries, there is no telling what kind of monster she has become. Humans react with awe. Nearby, men are instantly love-struck, completely captivated by her otherworldly charm. It is a total trance. However, the elite warriors in the room sense the hidden danger and start sweating bullets. Sigrun points directly at the prince, testing his reaction with a sharp, judgmental gaze. She mocks his lack of martial insight, but he just smirks, claiming his tastes are simply unique. Caught off guard, Sigrun falls silent. She politely ends the intro, saying it was a pleasure. As she retreats, the prince exhales. He barely survived that encounter. Now the consort hunt continues. He rejects a child for being too young, and a shy girl who will not even make eye contact. A battle-ready woman approaches, but he senses only hostility instead of any romantic spark. After dismissing more toddlers and bizarre candidates, he is officially over this entire process. Sitting by his exhausted mother, the queen, he ignores her sighs regarding his impossible standards. She lectures him about finding a wise, noble bride, not the usual girls he toys with. A servant interrupts the elven delegation, demands an audience. Queen Margarita grants them entry. Sigrun and her mysterious crew approach the throne. She formally introduces herself as Sigrun of Mistletoe. The queen welcomes the rare visitors. Sigrun mentions the kingdom's search for a royal bride. She boldly claims her high elf status equals that of the most prestigious human nobility. The prince watches warily, wondering what twisted scheme this dangerous woman is cooking up now. With a bright fake smile, Sigrun claims her age is not far from the prince's own. Internally, he is screaming. They are 1,000 years apart, her lies are absolutely shameless. She markets herself as the perfect immortal spouse, backed by her legion of loyal followers. She boldly declares that from the very first glance, an electric spark ignited between them. To her, their threads of destiny are now hopelessly tangled. The prince stands frozen. He knows the ancient law elves physically cannot lie about fate. Her confession is terrifyingly genuine. The queen watches with wide-eyed fascination as the nobles gossip. They whisper that an elven bond of fate could forge the ultimate power alliance. Suddenly, the prince descends from his throne with purpose. His sudden movement catches his mother completely off guard. He snatches Sigrun's hand and hauls her toward the exit. He loudly announces they need a private word immediately. He drags her out while the crowd stares in shock. Several nobles grumble, calling his reckless behavior an absolute disgrace. Behind heavy doors, the prince slams the handle shut. Finally, they are isolated from the prying eyes of the court. Facing her head-on, he drops the formalities and calls her by name. He demands her real motive while she plays coy about diplomatic ties. He repeats his demand, this time addressing her as Elder High Elf Sigrun. That title rattles her. He exposes her as the Mistletoe clan's executioner, a blade stained with centuries of blood. Dropping her act, Sigrun asks if he suspects she's here for an investigation, or if she's here to end his life. A dark smirk creeps across her face. Intrigued, she demands to know how a mere human learned her darkest secrets. The prince remains stone-faced, calculating his move. He knows he's standing before a monster whose power defies measurement. He realizes her high rank allows her to sense the echoes of his past lives, etched deep within his soul. Her suffocating aura flares as she mocks him. How dare a human know her identity, yet refuse to tremble in her presence? He smirks back, radiating pure confidence. He understands the danger perfectly, but he refuses to back down. He adds that only a fool would speak carelessly in front of a legendary killer like her. Stop the games, he warns. He tells her point blank not to mess with his destiny. He knows she is only mildly curious now. His goal, to manipulate that curiosity into a deeper obsession he can use. He must become a prize she cannot discard. Fascinated, she demands his true identity. He gives a cryptic, elusive reply. He claims he is just a pathetic prince abandoned by his father. He turns away, leaving his real self shrouded in mystery. If you are so curious, just watch me, he suggests. Sigrun watches him leave her mind a swirl of intrigue and unease. She admits this mission felt off. Why was a legend like her sent on such a trivial errand? Now she realizes he was the reason. She locks onto him as her new purpose. Internally, the prince shudders. She is just as creepy now as she was 400 years ago. Returning to the hall, he walks hand in hand with her. The crowd gasps as the prince and the elf appear together, their fingers tightly interlaced. Sigrun clings to him like a love-struck maiden. Meanwhile, the prince stares down the queen with a cold, expressionless gaze. He prepares for a bombshell. To everyone's absolute horror, he announces his formal engagement to the high elf. Inside, he is gagging at the thought of acting fond of her. But he knows this fake romance is a necessary evil. He must exploit her interest to buy himself some time. He carefully frames his next words to the court. He suggests they should not rush such a monumental union. The queen agrees, seeing a chance to weigh the alliance's value. For Sigrun, this wait is just letting her favorite delicacy, the prince, ripen for the harvest. But the prince has his own agenda. He vows to use this time to grow strong enough to escape her clutches. Elsewhere, a cup shatters against the floor. A jealous noble is absolutely livid over the prince's rising status. He rages that a nobody prince is suddenly outshining him. His face twists with pure, unadulterated envy. The prince has secured his uncle's backing and even the Iron Lion's loyalty. It is too much to stomach. Now he even has an elven beauty by his side. The noble begrudgingly admits her allure is beyond this world. A wicked smirk forms. He remembers their scheduled duel is fast approaching. Killing him would be too easy. No, he plans to maim the prince so badly he will never be a man again. With a twisted grin, he swears to crush the prince into the dirt during their fight. Outside the city, a veteran knight with a lion crest appears. Commander Silver Lion Sturmhilde Stuttgart has arrived. With a stern voice, he officially declares himself the referee for the upcoming duel. The notary confirms everything is by the book. The outcome of this clash will be final and absolute. As it begins, the first prince lazily draws his blade. He finds these dramatic formalities completely exhausting. The third prince smirks at his brother, promising that the show he has prepared will be unforgettable. Crowds swarm the arena as he issues a chilling warning, "Don't you dare bore this audience." The first prince hides his annoyance, but the third prince, he's absolutely livid. Reed summons his mana, swearing to silence his brother's arrogant mouth once and for all. Bathed in an eerie blue glow, the victor admits he was only playing with his food. No more games. He brings down a massive arc of blue light, ending it instantly. The third prince is sent flying, coughing blood, as the court watches in deathly silence. The veteran judge stands frozen. Is this monster really the same prince he once knew? He stares down coldly at his brother's broken, unconscious body. Total domination. The official steps forward, declaring the match over. The third prince can no longer fight. Victory is declared. The crowd erupts into a sea of stunned whispers and disbelief. Without a second glance, he turns his back on the arena ice in his veins. He scoffs at the vultures watching this child's play. But the nobles are shaken. The legendary Jillian defeated by a man who only picked up a sword months ago. Insane. Jillian wakes up in bandages, screaming in fury. He wants blood for this humiliation. Get my gear, he bellows, ready for a rematch. But his servants are trembling. Jillian snaps. What now? The answer, the first prince has already vanished from the capital, gone with Count Balarhard. Just like that, Jillian is left stunned and empty-handed. A royal convoy cuts through the biting northern snow, heading toward the desolate Balarhard lands. The count praises his riding. It's easy, the prince flexes, earning a stay humble mumble. Why the rush, the count asks. The prince's answer is simple. The capital isn't home. He despises those snake-like nobles who lick the boots of foreigners while betraying their king. He won't beg for loyalty. He belongs with real soldiers, not manipulative court politicians. Trust isn't free, but the prince knows nothing, builds a bond like bleeding together. Reckless, maybe, but the prince finally reveals the terrifying reason for his rush. A lethal elf woman has her sights set on him. Anyone she loves ends up ruined. He needs to get strong and fast before she can trap him in her deadly web. Peace makes men soft. To forge his blade, he needs the fires of a living hell. He's heading for the danger zone, the place where men are truly broken or reborn. It's the cradle of legends where the kingdom's greatest heroes first tasted blood. His decision is final. His true throne isn't a palace, it's the battlefield. Ahead lie the Blade Mountains, the jagged border his family has bled for across generations. Chibi moment. The prince is freezing, and the count is totally roasting him for it. He won't back down. He must endure even if he feels bad for the scholar. Why did the old man come? Adventure, he chirps, claiming his book will be useful. He groans at the old man's energy, then shifts his gaze to his stoic knight, Arwen. Arwen leads the way through the blizzard, her dark hair whipped by the freezing wind. Seeing her endure the worst of it, he pulls up alongside her. You okay? She stiffens her pride as a knight, refusing to let a single shiver show. He offers to take the lead, and for a second, a soft smile touches her lips. Deep down, she's relieved. At least their prince has the fire to survive. But the rest, they look like they'd rather be anywhere else. His men are miserable. He knows Carl would have whipped these lazy knights into shape. He remembers the king's cold warning. These knights aren't your personal toys, boy. The king didn't trust his motives for building a private circle, and it still stings. That petty dispute is exactly why Carl was banned from this mission. He's alone. He figures the king's hate is total overkill, even considering his own past mistakes. As the storm intensifies, he suspects there's a darker secret behind the king's malice. Zero time to overthink. The count grimly orders everyone to double their speed immediately. Move it. If we stall now, this whiteout becomes our grave, he warns. Suddenly, the gentle snow morphs into a lethal gale, sparking a brutal survival march. In a world where screams vanish in the wind, the count scans the chaos. He ignites his mana to roar across the storm. Ditch the carriages. Only horses. The prince realizes the count is using mana as a megaphone against the elements. He calls for Adelia, pulling her from the coach as she stumbles into the cold. He shields the trembling girl from the frost. It's only natural he shrugs off her thanks. Arwen checks on him, but the prince is only focused on the struggling troops. Down the line, knights are nearly blown away, anchored by their massive, useless shields. Protect Adelia, he commands Arwen before charging toward his faltering men. Ditch those shields, he bellows. They're just catching the wind and dragging you down. He orders them to drop everything, but their steel survival is the only priority now. He puts a powerhouse knight in the lead, forcing everyone into a tight single line. The northern soldiers are stunned. He's a natural leader. Where did he learn such grit? Every step is a soul-crushing battle as they trudge through the waist-deep white hell. Lungs burning, the prince and his inner circle keep their eyes on the distant fortress. Amidst the blinding whiteout, a knight stumbles, slipping dangerously into the freezing void. Man down, someone screams. Without hesitation, the prince cuts back through the formation. Out of my way, he roars, diving to check the fallen soldier's vitals. He hoists the unconscious warrior onto his back, personally carrying the extra weight. Burdened and gasping, he snaps at the stunned men to keep their legs moving. Driven by his resolve, the column finally reaches the massive fortress carved into the ice. As the nightmare march concludes, the exhausted prince refuses to drop his wounded comrade. He drags himself to the gates, exhaling a ragged breath and cursing the icy hell. The wind dies as fast as it arrived, leaving behind an eerily calm, crystal-clear sky. It feels like a dream. As the group huddles together, an armored shadow approaches. Count Balarhard waits at the entrance, a faint, respectful smirk touching his lips. Flanked by his elite, the Lord of Balarhard formally welcomes the prince to Winter Castle.